For 5 years, the Champions Chess Tour has delivered a spectacle of high-level chess, with some of the biggest prizes the game has seen. Its 6th iteration is no different. With $1.5 million and 12 spots in the Esports World Cup on the line, the best of the best are coming together for the first tour stop of the year. The Chessable Masters.
Where is the checkmate coming in? Do you just...
Oh, there we go.
Oh,
What?
that was sick from Alireza.
In the spotlight, of course, is Magnus Carlsen. He's the undisputed 5-time champion of the CCT,
He gets a win.
bringing home the tour finals every year since its inception.
The winner of the Champions Chess Tour, world #1, Magnus Carlsen, does it again.
The Chessable Masters has always provided a fiery start to the tour,
What a result, 2-0.
with the likes of Hikaru Nakamura, Ding Liren, and Wesley So all having taken home their own crown for the event.
Wesley So wins the Chessable Masters.
The stakes are higher than they have ever been. Who will etch their name into the CCT's legacy? Who will get their chance to make history at the Esports World Cup? It all starts with the Chessable Masters.
Welcome, everyone, back to the 2025 Chessable Masters as part of the Champions Chess Tour. Grandmaster Aman Hambleton here with Women's Grandmaster Dina Belenkaya. Dina, it was so much fun to commentate yesterday. Things are obviously only getting more intense as we get into today's matches.
Absolutely, Aman. I'm so excited to be back to this show. Today is gonna be an insane day. Who would have guessed? Fabiano Caruana himself got moved back to the losers bracket. That's something unpredictable. And today I'm here for the support of my friend Hikaru Nakamura, who is gonna be facing the one and only Alireza Firouzja.
I'm glad you mentioned it because that was going to be my next question. You know, the elephant in the room, the pineapple shirt. I sense the support. We see the pineapple in the background of Hikaru's cam every time he plays. So it had to be that. I understand, Dina, where your allegiances lie. But, before we get into all that hype matchups, we have Alireza, we have Hikaru. First, we need to remind everybody here exactly what the heck's going on. And, I'd love to do that, but Chess.com already did my job for me and made this great video.
The road to the Esports World Cup starts now. With 1.5 million on the line, the stakes have never been higher. Only 12 players will qualify from the Champions Chess Tour, and with just 2 events to earn points, every move counts. That's why this year's CCT is bigger, bolder, and more intense than ever. All matches are now placed at a blazing fast 10+0 time control, and the playoff bracket has doubled. 16 players will fight for survival instead of just 8. It all starts with a high-stakes 9-round Swiss, where the top 15 advance. But here's the twist. The #1 seed gets first pick in the playoff bracket. The next 7 finishers pick their opponents, setting up a ruthless best-of-2 showdown to claim the final playoff spots. Then it's game on. 8 qualifiers take on 8 invited titans in a double elimination slugfest. Winners bracket matches are best of 4. The lower bracket stays best of 2. And if it's dead even, cue the clutch Armageddon tiebreaker. Every match, every move, every second matters, because only the best make it to the Esports World Cup. The Chessable Masters is here. This is do or die mode. Let's go.
And now that you guys have heard all that, I'm sure everything is crystal clear. And even if it's not, this is something that everyone can understand. This is the path, of course, to the Esports World Cup. Dina, let's have a look at the bracket here. All the way up in the winners side of things, we have Magnus Carlsen. He's always dominant in these champion chess tours. I mean, he's won every single one so far. He's up against Arjun. So it's Team Liquid against Gen G, and also Hikaru Nakamura representing Team Falcon against Alireza, who, I quizzed him, hey, I signed to a team yet, Alireza? He wasn't saying anything yesterday.
Yeah, well, he's hoping for it, and rightfully so, because Alireza Firouzja is perhaps one of the strongest online players of these days, and especially when it comes to no increment time control. And I think we should also take a look at the losers bracket because things are gonna get just as spicy there.
Yeah, down here in the losers bracket, reminder, anyone losing a match down here immediately is eliminated. So the stakes are much higher in the losers bracket, but they can still find their way all the way back to the winners bracket and win the entire event. So don't count anyone out. Fabiano against Esipenko, Nepo against Artemiev, Wei Yi against Duda, Yu Yang against Anish Giri. I always gotta say it, but when we're in the losers bracket, Dina, any of those names stand out to you as one to watch coming back maybe to the winners?
Well, yeah, I've already mentioned my surprise about Caruana being in this bracket. Certainly not something that would fit his name, but I can also admit that Jan Nepomniachtchi is perhaps one of the strongest players in this lineup and definitely is gonna try his best to get back to where he belongs. Although, looking at the bracket, imagine Caruana wins versus Esipenko and then Nepomniachtchi beats Artemiev, his compatriot, then they are gonna be meeting together in the losers round 3, which I believe we would also be covering today.
That's right. That's right. We'll be covering the losers round 2, losers round 3, as well as the winners semis and the finals there as well. So let's immediately get into the games here. On the screen, it looks a little bit smaller. We did lose some players, sadly, but we have 6 games on the top of your screen right there. Into the action are Magnus and Hikaru in their matches against Arjun and Alireza, respectively. Dina, we have some games in progress. Does anything look like you want to jump into it right away?
Well, it has to be Nakamura versus Firouzja. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think with the shirt that you have on, I would hate to go anywhere else first. So let's jump right into that board. That's top of your screen. Let's bring it up full screen here. We got the cameras on. Nothing's changed for these two. The same backgrounds. And let's have a look at this position here. Because, I mean, after this last move, I was going to say, kind of interesting. The move D3 makes a lot of sense to me. One of the most basic threats in chess. A pawn fork in the center. So, I mean, Alireza, he must have really wanted his bishop on G6 because he was willing to spend an extra move just to get it there.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say Hikaru is not surprising us with his typical 1b3. That's definitely something that is hurting me personally as he doesn't control the center. And I'm just gonna quickly walk you through this setup that we have seen. Oh, who would have imagined that the bishop on f5 is not arriving there for the first time?
Yeah,
in
I would never
their
have.
life.
I would never have guessed that.
And then knight c6, another very weird move. When you are attacking the d5, you would suggest something like c6, but no, it's knight c6. C takes d5, knight takes d5, knight back to f3, and that's why the bishop went back to f5. And of course, met by d3, bishop now has to retreat to g6, knight bd2, e5, and that is the current position on the board.
So interesting to see Hikaru taking a much different approach to his b3 because he's always played this opening. It's in his wheelhouse. He's a true expert at this move, but I usually see him play it with e3 and developing the light squared bishop on a different diagonal. But here, the way he's been playing it yesterday, today, he's going for a double fianchetto system almost all the time. So really interesting to see a new take on an opening that he's been playing for years.
Yeah, and I can say that this reminds me of something like a Sicilian dragon reversed, with White having to play the Sicilian setup, although probably bishop on b2 doesn't, like, the queen side bishop doesn't arrive that fast. Could that be in White's favor?
Yeah, it's possible here. I definitely like Hikaru's position here, especially because we saw him even against Grishuk in some of the matches yesterday. He was in some positions that I was not really a fan of. But here, I really like it. I think he has easy moves to make. Bishop g2, castling on the king side, and even moves like knight to e4 into c5, maybe a3, b4, expanding on the queen side. So I like the potential here, but obviously I say a3, b4, and Alireza, he's 2 steps ahead of me and says no with a5.
Yes, that's very interesting to witness indeed. And so then we're gonna see bishop G2 and short castle. Well, F6 is a sort of Miran setup, and the only thing I would add is that I kind of feel more confident when this pawn is on C5, usually controlling the center, and here the knight is on C6. It almost feels like white is gonna have a much easier play just because they have all the plans, all the maneuvers, and look at this knight on F5. They say knights on F5, F4, C4, C5 are the strongest squares for to beat.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we see the power right here. It's more than likely that that knight's going to need to exchange for the bishop in some ways. And I was going to say, are we just going to see knight takes e7? Or maybe, is there an idea to recapture with the pawn here at all? I don't know, but it's one way to sort of get that pawn off the c7 square you were just talking about. Maybe there's some pressure on the c file. This is actually an interesting way to play. Now you take that knight off the d5 square, and then there's a d pawn right behind it, ready to take the center. So he could be saying, look, you can win the bishop pair, but you got to do it on my terms.
Exactly. And then one more thing I would add is that it actually reminds me of some kind of English structures. If you are familiar with those, I'm sure you are, as a knowledgeable grandmaster. But again, just looks like white has achieved a lot compared to the usual setups, as if Hikaru's 1b3 actually worked.
Yeah, I think that in this position, Hikaru will be pretty happy because he might just get the bishop pair, take that small kind of advantage forward. But from Alireza's perspective, time's even. You got the black pieces. You're clearly not worse to start things off. If anything, it's going to be a small advantage, like maybe a bishop pair or something. I'm sure he's not too concerned, and I definitely think Alireza can be satisfied. So, Dina, what do you think? Shall we take a look at some of the other games, revisit our bird's eye view?
Absolutely. Let's do that as we speak. And we have Carlsen versus Arjun. I think this is something that absolutely needs to be taken care of. And it looks like those guys have already traded some pieces, almost approaching an endgame.
Yeah, we need to go right into that game because actually Arjun playing for Gen G is someone that I feel like we didn't drop in on his games enough of. We only dropped in when he was flagging his opponents. So I feel like we've given him such a bad edit here. So let's take a look at his game before he's at that final stage once again. He's got the black pieces here against Magnus Carlsen. And honestly, everyone in the winner's bracket right now, I feel like has been dominating their matches. That their play has been phenomenal. Alireza has had probably the toughest run of any of them because let's remember, Dina, like Arjun, Magnus, Hikaru, they've all been like, 2-0, 2.5, 3-0ing their opponents.
Yeah, that's true. And Arjun is definitely one of the the least experienced here. So that's understandable that the run must have been pretty uneasy for him. But he's also one of the most promising ones because recently he just broke the rating as one of the highest rated players in India. And whoa, look at this knight e4 move, attacking the queen, attacking the knight, and putting the knight right in front of the pawn, saying, hey, this pawn cannot take because it's a pin. And I do have to add one more thing about this position, is that you might have think that black is better because black's got the center, they got the control with their e5 and d5, but unfortunately, with this b6 being isolated, it just makes 3 pawn islands for black, and therefore, long-term, the black's pawn structure is actually weaker. And who would have guessed, Aman, with this 3 random pawns on the line like that, white is better.
Yeah, that's a good explanation and a good way for players to start looking at pawn structures and saying which side is better. Just count up the different islands. As soon as there's no pawns beside each other, it becomes a new pawn island. Black has 3, white has 2. And targeting that one isolated pawn right there on b6 is Magnus with the move rook to b1. And I feel like this knight on e4 is one of those moves that you play it just because you can. It just looks cool.
Yeah.
And in this case, it happens to be a dang good move as well. If you take it with the knight, as you were probably about to show, pawn takes back and problems on the d5 square. So this is a position where I'm seeing a b6 pawn that really can't be defended. And it feels like Magnus is going to enjoy a pawn up position no matter what.
Yeah, and I would add that even though you might not be willing to take the pawn right away just because your knight would be hanging, then you would always have this check to throw, which just happened. Knight takes f6, check, rook takes f6. The queen is attacked. It's moving back to a2 as the rook was actually protecting the b6, but the pressure is nowhere gone. There is an e5 pawn being attacked. The knight on a5 is on the rim, and you know that it is actually slim. So yeah, things to solve here for Arjun. Not the best situation. Shall we move on to some other games going on?
Definitely. Yep. Magnus has max pressure in that position. It looks like somehow, some way he'll net himself a pawn. He has the advantage in that one. And let's keep looking around here. We've taken a look at the winner's bracket, but now there's actually more games going on in the loser's bracket. So looking down there, how about Duda and Wei Yi? That one looks like I just see I'm a sucker for a queen on h5, the green board at the bottom of our screen right here in the middle. I see queen on h5. I actually see both sides kind of making aggressive intentions. And Duda is actually someone that right after the games yesterday, Dina, I thought I caught him not just in Title Tuesday, but actually winning the entire event. Can you imagine playing a whole day of chess and then showing up to Title Tuesday, first place?
Which is absolutely insane because as I was thinking about it, Title Tuesday must have started about 1.5 hours right after the yesterday showdown has finished. So yeah, Duda probably felt like he wanted, to gain that confidence back. He was looking for some blood, for some action, and he got it. And right now, he's being even more ambitious because he just grabbed the pawn on b7. I don't know if you noticed, and now the knight is back on c5, and that's an outpost knight. That's a super strong knight. While this bishop on f5 is just a fake bishop because it's surrounded by its own pawns. And okay, it is protecting the mate on h7, but there is no mate rate as of right now.
Yeah, the queen on h5, I was talking about how great it was that it's there, but it's truly just on its own. There's no support for that queen. In fact, white's pieces are all on the queen side of the board. So it looks like the pieces are kind of on different sides here. We have bishop pair for Wei Yi with the black pieces, and Wei Yi is also on Weibo Gaming. So Wei Yi has been signed to an esports team as well, and I think he's definitely representing pretty well so far. The bishop pair here, Dina, even though it's scary, I definitely think can be used. One thing I'm wondering is, how does white actually break through? What's the next step? Because I'm looking at that knight on c5, and if I ever move it, I feel like the b3 pawn falls. But if I never move the knight on c5, then my two rooks, it's like I have all this firepower behind the knight, but I can never use it. So I'm not so sure if this, is as much of an advantage as I'd like to think.
Well, I do have to point out that white is not just one pawn up on b3. There is also an h2 pawn, which makes it 2 pawns up. And we all know that 3 pawns up are going to be equal a piece. And I think here is an answer to your question. White is just played a4. So right now, meanwhile, you think they are creating a backwards pawn on b3. I think their goal is actually to put the queen on b5, or even better, knight d2, knight b1, knight a3, and knight b5. That would be a dream come true. I said that, and I see queen b5.
And let's not forget, of course, if you bring the queen over to the king side, queen a7 for black, queen e7, and then queen out to h4 or g5, I think that's going to be what Wei Yi is trying to do here. So a really interesting struggle in this game. You mentioned 2 pawns, not to be scoffed at. That's a serious advantage in chess, but we see desperation now for Wei Yi. He's saying, I'm clearly down 2 pawns. I got to go all out. This looks like a position that it's not, maybe that interesting right now, but it feels like it could explode down the line.
Oh, absolutely. And, this is the right thing to do, practically speaking. When you are losing on one side, just go all in on the other side. Plus, the other side happens to be the king. So it's going to be very uncomfortable for young Krzysztof here to defend. But on a bright side, he actually has this knight to g3 that looks like it would stop any threats. Oh, and he just did it.
I was going to say, it wasn't on g3 yet, but you willed it into existence. Looks like good defense so far. I will say Wei Yi has great attacking chances, so this is one to keep an eye on. Let's go back to the bird's eye view. There's a few matches we haven't quite got into just yet. Dina, and I see some eval bars that are reaching for the skies, which definitely means there's some big advantages. I see a couple extra pawns top of our screen for Hikaru Nakamura representing the Falcons. That looks like something that we expect him to find a way to win. And, what about Nepo against Artemiev there? Big advantage opening up for him.
Let me try to find this one for you. And in the meantime,
I'm also looking at that Magnus Carlsen game against Arjun, and everything looks so good for Magnus, but now all of a sudden, kind of hovering around the even mark is the eval bar. No advantage anymore for Magnus. Now, that's not to say that he won't be able to win this one. He has an extra pawn, but for some reason, the engine is spying a ton of counterplay for Arjun.
yeah. Well, I've got the Jan Nepomucci versus Vladislav Artemiev here for you, and it looks like it's absolutely not fun for black.
Oh
with
my
this
goodness.
beautiful rook on e6. Look at that. And how many pawns are we up?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it is 2 pawns. There are some doubled pawns there, so it doesn't really feel like it. But the bishop pair is so tough to handle. The bishop on b3 and h4 are just piercing the position. The rooks are doubling. I mean, if you ever take the rook on e6, which Vladislav would never do, then obviously white will take back with the pawn and happily undouble. So really tough position to even find a move here, Dina.
Yeah, and look at the time advantage. This is totally insane. It looks like an Armageddon game. 4 minutes for Jan Nepomucci versus only 1 minute for Vladislav Artemiev, and queen d3 has just happened on the board, offering a queen trade. You know the very basic rule: whenever you're up material, trade pieces, and this is what Jan is doing. Now rook c8, attacking the c3, trying to do at least something, but I bet just simple c4 would solve all the trouble for white.
Yeah, c4. I was going to say there's also bishop e1, there's rook e3, and every move that I'm looking at as a candidate, as an option, looks like a good one. And that's a good place to be. I love the removal of the rook, and as you're highlighting, bringing the bishop into that square looks like a really, really strong idea. So Nepo up 2.5 minutes here, up 2 pawns with the bishop pair. Dina, for someone at this level, you just have to say that's something that you expect to win almost every single time.
Absolutely. I think it's time for us to safely say Jan is going to win this game and just move forward to some other games as we are approaching time scrambles.
Yep. Let's do it. I also saw the result come in from Hikaru.
Ooh.
As I said, up 2 pawns in a rook endgame. He brings that point home against Alireza in the first game. And speaking of advantages, Magnus seems to have got his advantage back. It looked like maybe Arjun could find a defense, but down a pawn, top of your screen in the blue, if he was ever going to find a defense, it would have been a crazy engine line. Obviously, Magnus Carlsen up a pawn in an endgame is you're going to bet on him every single time.
Up a pawn and up soon to be 2 minutes on the clock. And when you're approaching knight endgames, the simple rule is just the same as pawn endgames. If you got an extra pawn, you're gonna win anyway. And right now, as we speak, Magnus has already 2 extra pawns, and the h4 is gonna fall. So yeah, I feel like this is gonna be just another very predictable result in this particular game.
It is, yeah. Magnus in that Team Liquid gear, he's looking unstoppable right now. All the pawns taken off the board, and I don't even know if there's really a hope here, because you're going to have to try to sack your knight, but Magnus is not going to be allowing a knight sacrifice for all of the pawns. There's no way that he allows that. Maximum is going to be 1 pawn, and he's going to have 1 to make a queen.
Yep. I still want to find some scrambles. Any other game we can catch before the countdown is over?
Yeah, I think that the end game there for Magnus looks like it should be pretty clinical. We have a couple more results. Duda with a win against Wei Yi. Those 2 extra pawns were too many. We just saw Nepo in a completely dominating position. He concluded that one. Yu Yangyi against Annie Giri looks position that may have just wrapped up bottom left of your screen there in the red. Yeah, that looks like it might just be a potential resignation on the spot almost, because I think that position is just winning.
Yeah, I think we should just stick to Caruana Esipenko because those two players are equally 1 minute each. The position looks equal, and something tells me the very dirty flagging is gonna take place soon.
I trust your instincts when it comes to where we can find that, Dina. So let's go straight to Fabiano against Esipenko. We conclude that Magnus is very likely going to win that game, and also Yu Yi very, very likely to win his game against Giri. So let's stick with the game that is in the most balance at the moment.
Yeah, and right now, even we can see a slight advantage on the black side, probably because this a6 pawn doesn't go anywhere and the bishop is blocking it. It is interesting to notice that this is an opposite colored bishop situation, which makes things even spicier. And then black has the potential of connected pass pawns, with the f pawn being a protected pass pawn. But again, it's 2 pawns against 2 pawns, material equality. So very interesting to see.
Yeah, and definitely a bit of a push here coming for Esipenko because the pieces for white are not that well placed. You got the bishop on c6, barely holding the rook, which is barely holding the knight. Look at this coordination. It feels like there's a piece that's about to be dropped here. I can feel it.
And so does the evil bar. We see it goes insane, attacking the bishop. Where does the bishop go?
Yeah, there was no place to put it. You move the bishop, you lose the knight. As I said, the pieces were just, they were not coordinating very well at all.
And now black is a clear bishop, but it's 10 seconds against 14 seconds.
Yep. I think at this point, you have to say Esipenko more than capable on the clock. I think he's got this, but we'll see it played out, maybe? No, he decides to call it.
Why would you resign?
Well, I mean, he had
11 seconds versus 4?
I mean, he had the 4, though. He had the 4, so I can understand it. I can understand it.
No. Fabiano has 4.
Wait, that's what I mean. Fabiano resigned, so it made sense, I thought. Yeah,
you're right. Right. Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to keep track even for us watching that game. That's how tense it was, as that was the final result coming in that round. Wow, so much to digest. I feel like we had a decisive result in every single game. Let's start with the winners, and we really did have a decisive result in every game. Magnus Carlsen bringing home the point in the first game along with Hikaru Nakamura. Wow, it was the white pieces that were unstoppable up there in the winners. And going down to the losers, we just saw Esipenko with that amazing time scramble. He managed to win on the board. Nepo and Duda with some crushing victories with the white pieces. And Yu Yi, we never dropped in on that game, Dina, but it looks like put it away in an endgame against Giri.
Yeah, and that makes the situation even harder now for those who lost, evidently, because they have to strike back. And as we can see on the bird's eye view, the games have already begun. So, Aman, take a lead.
I mean, it's crazy. My heart rate is still so high from watching that time scramble. I can't believe we're back into the games already. But I mean, I feel like that's that esports influence. We're just right back in. There's no breaks. This is a treat for the fans here. Top of your screen. Magnus against Arjun and Hikaru against Firouzja are right back into play. I mean, why don't we jump right into Firouzja and Hikaru and have a look at this kind of interesting setup that Alireza has gone for to start off this round.
Absolutely. Let me find this one for you. And indeed, I'm still shaking from the previous scramble. I cannot believe I confused Esipenko for Fabiano, but
hey, that's just the time scrambles, right? Everything is flying. I think that's what makes an event like this so exciting. And here we are. 9 minutes apiece for the players, both reasonably familiar with this opening. I have to say, what's so remarkable about this position is we've got white's queen on a2. Now, in case you didn't realize, it is on a2. I had to actually just look at the position twice to make sure. The queen is kind of sneaking over there as if to say, okay, black can never play king to h8. And then they can never play pawn to f5. So maybe it's some weird idea where you're trying to stop the move f5 from being played. Because I'm not going to lie, Dina, I would be a little scared of my king side with all my pieces thrown away on the queen side here as white.
And I totally understand you. And the piece of me wishes this bishop on b3 would have been on g2.
Right.
That would have solved all the weaknesses on the on this fianchetto side. But you know what? This knight g1 kicking the bishop out, and then f3 coming. I think white has nothing to fear.
Yeah, the move knight g1 on the previous turn is a really phenomenal move. It's maybe a move that would go overlooked by some more inexperienced players, but removing that bishop and allowing maybe your king to move up to g2, as you're indicating, pawn pushes to remove that bishop. There's so many ways now for white to untangle a little bit. And I'm kind of expecting that the knight on b1 needs to get developed. Knight d2 looks like it's in the cards. But I wonder, should we be throwing in pawn takes on c6? For me, it's really tough to understand, like, do we play that? Do we not? I think at the moment, you're just going to leave things and be comfortable. Well, until this move, now it needs an answer.
Oh, c4, and that's an answer because it is protecting b5, and I believe the idea is that after c takes b5, you might actually consider c takes b5, and then your bishop would still be as good and you would be controlling the c6, although even a takes b5 is an option because a4 is not a problem. You still got the pawn majority in the center, potential strong knight on d5, and this pawn is blocked. So yeah, I think both options are good. And I was just gonna say, why would you even worry capturing the c6? Because in the end of the day, you would be trading b5 for b7.
Yeah, that's a great point and a good reminder about pawn exchanges. You're not trading the pawn that you think you're trading, right? You think you're trading b5 for c6, but you're actually trading it for the pawn on b7. So that'll often put into context some of those decisions, and you look at it and you're like, okay, no, I would never do that. The move c4, although the best move in the position, strikes me as unusual, right? We have a queen on a2, bishop on b3. We went and put all that firepower there just to play c4 and block it. I mean, I'm struggling to understand this even as a grandmaster, but it's just such a funny looking move, but totally effective. And the best players in the world are going to know those exact moments when they can do that. Dina, I think at this point, let's head back to our bird's eye view. We have a lot of other games in action. Very balanced here. Definitely advantage Alireza early on, as he is just moving pawn after pawn in that game.
Yeah, and how is Magnus Carlsen doing against Arjun Erigaisi?
Yep, this is usually the matchup that is so important in these best of fours, right? We remind everyone that in the winner's bracket in this event, we have a best of four. So lots of chess to be played, but for someone that wins game one, to jump out to that 2-game lead is such a commanding position to be in. So I think we should jump into that game. Top left of your screen there, Arjun Erigaisi. He's got the white pieces here, and in my opinion, he might not need a win, Dina, but I think he needs points on the board.
Oh yeah, he does. And look at this king on f2. It is absolutely not castled. It is an artificial castle with the idea of bringing the rook and then putting the king on g1. And me saying that watching h4. How's that for the castle? You just go for the attack and activate the rook from this side. Very resourceful. I do have to highlight the c3 and the a4 pawns. These are two isolated pawns. They are, well, a4 is not technically isolated, but they are isolated from each other, making them, again, an extra pawn islands for white. And you would think that this is creating a weakness, but this c3 pawn has actually a very important function here because it is controlling the d4 square, which is a central square, and it is opening the file for the rook, which could actually stop the bishop from getting out. So sometimes you can actually allow yourself these things as long as you are aware of its pluses and minuses.
Yeah, that's well said. I think the best players are able to discern, okay, this is a case where I can take this weakness because of the good that comes out of it as well. Very tough for weaker players to evaluate. You just kind of think in terms of, black and white. This is good, this is bad. But as you get to the top level of chess, you're able to really break it down like that. The move f6 was just played. I find this to be a little bit of a strange move because I'm thinking to myself, wait, what does that do about h5? What if I just keep going with my plan? h5, I want to play pawn to h6. If black plays pawn to h6, I can take it with the bishop, right? We have a nice pin there. So I'm looking at f6 and I'm thinking, okay, just play h5 and see what happens next.
Yeah, probably the idea is to somehow retreat the bishop on f7 or even bring the king on f7 and get the heck out of there. And then this thing is absolutely unexplicable, Aman. Instead of pushing for h5, continuing the thing, we have this expression in Russian, if you said A, you gotta say B. So h4 was A and the B would be h5, but instead, White just removes the rook and puts it on completely other side of the board, saying, how about rook b5, and then doubling the rook and attacking the b7?
Yep. And I think we have a few more moves in here as well. I see that black has continued with the queen to c7. There we go. Bishop e6 as well. And yeah, Magnus is pretty happy here, I would say. I thought that Magnus's position would be more vulnerable if that attack went through. h5, h6, at least it would have been a bit more shaky. The way I see it now, Magnus is definitely equal and maybe can even push for a bit more. So I would say he's kind of out of the water in terms of danger. Now you would never know that White's king was in the middle of nowhere. And to be honest, Dina, I'm looking at these bishops, opposite bishops, pawns trading on the queen side. I think we need to go back to our bird's eye view and say that Magnus has kind of dodged the initial danger in that position and seems to be a very equal fight.
Especially after that trade on c5 that completely made the pawn structure symmetrical, although White still has an edge in my opinion. But indeed, let's take a look at some other games that are taking place right now.
I'd love to go right into Giri against Yu Yi. Hadn't dropped in on that in the first round there. And Anish and Yu Yi are two players that are probably not getting as much attention as some of the others here, especially those recently signed to various esports orgs. But we definitely saw big fights from both of them earlier in the tournament. So finding themselves in the losers bracket, we're looking bottom left of your screen there in the red. This is a position that definitely looks to me, pretty even, but I guess we come to expect that from Anish Giri, right? The jokes just write themselves.
I have a flashback to something we just saw in the previous round, which was Hikaru Nakamura's setup against Alireza Firouzja, remember, with this b3 and the bishop on b2 and the bishop on g2. The only difference is I don't see anywhere dark square bishop.
Yeah, probably a bit of an achievement for Yu Yi to have traded those pieces. On the dark squares, maybe the bishop went to f6 and they traded on that diagonal. And it looks like the same might happen with the bishop on g2. One thing I know about these positions is if you look at the pawn structure for White and you just take all the pieces off the board. So take the bishop on g2 off, take the knight on c4 off. Imagine they get traded. All of a sudden, it doesn't look that good. The king is a little bit exposed, right? And the d3 pawn you highlighted in blue there is just target on the D file. Meanwhile, black has almost zero targets. Everything is just perfectly defended, right? It's back, it's safe. So it's weird that White's position kind of looks good, but it looks good when pieces are around. As soon as the pieces disappear, black has such an easy game.
Yeah, that's the mindset I would always go with when facing a Sicilian and playing with White, but for some reason I would just never be able to simply trade all those pieces and attack the pawn. It's one of those things, easier said than done.
Completely true. Queen to a3 was the last move of the game. I wonder, are you really threatening a7? I don't think so. Even if I could ever take that pawn down there in the corner, I would never do it. Instead, I think that we're just going to see pressure on the D file. The one thing to watch out for here is the move D4 from White. So I think that White might be intending pawn to D4 up one square and using that queen as, you got it, a little bit of an X-ray on the queen on E7 to get a lot of trades, but also get rid of that D pawn on D3 that you and I just agreed could be a weakness.
Yeah, a very solid, I would say, position for both colors here. It just looks to me that we gotta take a look at a little bit more games as we speak, because there might be some more aggressive options for us, and we're definitely looking for some drama here.
More aggressive option than Anish Giri? Impossible. I dare you to find one.
All right, how about Esipenko versus Caruana? Oh my goodness.
Okay, you found one.
Is Esipenko about to win again?
Yeah, you found one. That didn't take long. Let's have a look. Esipenko against Fabiano. And after that first game, remember, Esipenko was one of the few players, bottom right of your screen, we're looking, one of the few players to actually manage to win with the black pieces, right? It's not an easy thing to do. So now it feels like, if you take a tennis analogy, he's kind of broken serve a little bit. And now he has the white pieces, a huge advantage. Bottom right of your screen, just count up those pawns as well. You got a pawn on a2, pawn on c5. I see absolutely no issues in that game for him. 2 extra pawns. Fabiano is suffering here.
Yeah. Let me try to find this one for you.
And also, just looking at the eval bar, the best tool, especially for the wider audience as we tune in here, just to the left side of every single board on your screen is an evaluation bar. It tells you how the game is going better than I can tell you. So definitely use that as your guidance there. And we can see the evaluation bar on this screen is very high for a reason, Dina.
Well, there is a simple reason, Aman. If you just count to 2, you would understand. 1, 2.
That's a perfect explanation. And honestly, that's probably what Fabiano is doing in his head right now. And he can't believe he's sitting there 2 pawns down. You can just see that face is not one that's enjoying this position. He's already down 1-0. And the reason that this is so important, Dina, is that the matches in the losers bracket, remember, they are not best of 4. Okay? We can't stress that enough, which means in this amazingly good position for white, all he needs is to tie the game, and he knocks out Fabiano Caruana from this event. So that's why Fabi looks stressed right now.
Oh my goodness. You realize that means that Fabiano is out.
Yep, he will be knocked out with a loss, which is what, I mean, it's so tough because he's knocked out with a draw. So he's sitting there, and it takes one of the best players in the world to not lose this game, but to win it is a completely different story. I don't know what he's got a tall task ahead of him. I don't know what he's going to do.
There is nothing to do. I'm sorry. Even I could win this position with white.
You heard her. Put her in, coach. Put her in.
Yep. I think we should just say goodbye to Fabi as we speak. Okay, I'm just kidding. Never say goodbye too early. But I think it's time for us to move on to some other games, because this one, I'll be honest with you, I don't see a way Fabiano could pull it back.
Yeah, that's why those losers bracket games are really so intriguing, and we must keep an eye on them because it's only the best of 2. If it's tied, we do see Armageddon, but I'm looking at Artemiev and Nepo here, Dina, and that one is looking really intriguing because Artemiev needs a comeback game, right? Nepo won that first one. Artemiev battling back against the wall here with a win would force an Armageddon.
Yeah, Artemiev Nepomniachtchi as we speak here. This is the position. Oh, okay, we gotta count. The first thing always to count. There is a pawn on e5 that is falling.
Yeah, I mean, it's falling every which way. The bishop takes, pawn takes, 2 pass pawns in the center connected. I mean, these are the nicest pawns you could ask for.
Well. And the score here is already 1-0 for Jan Nepomniachtchi. And yeah, it looks like Vladislav is actually striking back. He's holding things together in this matchup.
Yeah, he is. I'm looking at the move knight e7 here, and it fails due to the pawns just encroaching up the board. Pawn to e6 check. Pawn to d6 after, pawn to d7, and the pawns just go all the way. Bishop comes into f6, and that would be a quick way for this game to end.
Whoa. I wonder what Jan has messed up. He's trying to do at least something with playing b5, hoping for a capture.
Yeah, at this point,
And
I wonder about this sacrifice. He's obviously trying to hit this pawn in the center, and what black would want is white's pawns to advance on the dark squares. So he wants to push that pawn on d5 up 1 square, and that way the king could nestle itself into the e6 square, and everything's stuck. But if the white pawns advance the other way on the light squares, it's not so easy to do.
Yeah, whenever you have a bishop, you kind of want to advance the pawns to the opposite side color of your bishop because you want to control the other colors color square with your bishop. So you want to have that balance between your pawn and your bishop.
Yep. And some scores to report as well. Esipenko has beat Fabiano. It was not surprising. We just dropped in on that game. And that means that Team Liquid Fabi is officially knocked out of this competition. He's in the losers bracket, which means one more loss does knock you out. Esipenko moves on. And wow, there's more games to get to. It looks like Artemiev can bring this back to a tied match. I see that Wei Yi is battling against Duda and honestly looks completely winning. It doesn't look like a competition. I think that game is over and done with. Don't even need to drop in on it, honestly. So of the games remaining here, which one is catching your eye, Dina?
Well, certainly Hikaru Nakamura, as he is about to lose to Alireza Firouzja, and that would be a very serious turnover of events because Hikaru had the lead in this matchup. Look at this position on the screen. We got a very interesting endgame where each side has passed pawns, and
Well,
if we count the material...
It's not that interesting, is it? It's down a rook.
Oh yeah, you're right. Never mind.
I was like, what's really happening here? I was actually surprised we're still playing the game.
Yeah, well, I was personally counting the amount of pawns. But,
I was going to say, you always remind me to count, and I started with the rooks this time, so it was a little easier.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, okay, never mind. Congratulations to Alireza, who just stroked back against Hikaru, and now the score is 1-1. There are 2 more games of this matchup, but as we approach the time scramble, we gotta jump to some other games.
Yeah, I know that Artemiev pulled that game through with a victory. Wei Yi is about to win his game. I think Giri and Yu Yang is the place for us to be because Wei Yi is already up an entire knight on that board right there in green on bottom of your screen. So let's go to Giri against Yu Yang. Oh, and they made a draw. Just as we say that.
And
I can't believe that.
Anish Giri is knocked out.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, I was looking at the position. I was like, no, this must be a win. But let's remember those rules in the loser's bracket. Yu Yang, smart gamesmanship, knows exactly what he needs to secure the knockout. And he does claim the draw there. Wow. All results are in. Dina, they've really just all wrapped up at the same time. We need to go back to the bracket here to really sort of debrief on what we just saw because a lot of players are actually being eliminated as we speak here. So let's take a look at the bracket based on what we just saw. We know that Esipenko is moving on. That's what we can say for sure, knocking out Caruana. So let's have a look at things in the bracket.
We also know that Anish Giri is being locked out as well. But first, speaking of the winners bracket, we see that Carlsen is leading against Arjun with 1.5 to 0.5 points. And the most perhaps interesting for some of us matchup is between Hikaru Nakamura and Alireza Firouzja. Here we have a tie. 1-1, and once again taking a quick glance at the losers bracket.
Here we go. Yeah, losers round 2. Esipenko moving on. We do have Nepo and Artemiev. That's the one matchup that will be going to an Armageddon. And I think with those results that have come in, Wei Yi with the white pieces did win. So I believe that match with Duda is tied. And as you mentioned, Anish Giri is going home. He's knocked out of the 2025 Chessable Masters, which means Esipenko, Yu Yang, they're moving on and waiting for the results, which means that we have some Armageddon matches that are going to be happening in the losers bracket. And of course, we have a lot more action in the winners, which means that, you know, we definitely want to remind people what the format is for Armageddon, because you haven't seen it yet today, Dina, so let's talk about it. Armageddon chess, in my opinion, the most exciting. Black pieces are a big advantage in Armageddon because if the game ends in a tie, as a lot of chess games do at this level, black actually wins the game. So clearly, everyone wants to be black. And because everyone wants to play with the black pieces, they bid. They say, I'm willing to play black with this amount of time. White always starts with 10 minutes, but the players bid, and whoever bids the lower amount of time takes that amount of time and they get their black pieces. So we'll see. We're gonna let the players get their bids in for how much time they're willing to take in order to get the coveted black pieces in Armageddon. Dina, are you as excited as I am for Armageddon? Maybe it's just a me thing, I don't know.
No, I'm absolutely excited, and I'm even more excited now that I know that white gets 10 minutes all the time, because this is something I would not understand yesterday, I recall it. So yeah, that makes total sense. And well, Aman, I'm very sad that Anish Giri is leaving us, but the good thing is we will still see him on the Chessable preview.
That's right, we'll see Anish one more time before we go to break when we talk about the Chessable variation preview. If you're seeing openings that you like from your favorite players in the Chessable Masters, then Chessable Variation Preview lets you sample trainable variations from any paid course for free, allowing you to explore different courses, whether it's on openings, endgames, tactics, strategy, anything else in between. You get 10 free previews per month, and all you need to do is visit a course page and click Explore Variations. Try it for yourself at chessable.com or !Chessable in the chat. And with that, of course, we are going to take a break. We're coming back with lots of action here. We have Armageddon and we have the rest of the matches in the winner's bracket. Stay tuned. More action in the 2025 Chessable Masters after this break.
C5. Okay, C takes D4.
So you playing without C?
Yeah, we're playing blindfold. Oh, what up, Kenny? What's up, bro?
That's another level right there. This boy not even looking at him after. What? I'm about to just do all this. See how really good you are.
Castle king side? Yeah. Queen side?
King side.
He went king. Oh, he went king side. Okay.
Wow.
Wait, how did he castle king side? Is this bishop on D3? So let's do bishop takes D3. I swore he didn't move that. That's funny. It's kind of funny. So it's queen on D3, pawn on D4, pawn on D5, pawn on C4, pawn on D6. He's castled. I did I have a queen on D8, queen on D3 now. So bishop F5 was an error actually. Okay, so let's go H6 then. It's interesting. F rook E8. If rook takes, take with the rook. What? Rook takes rook, and then pre-move rook E8.
Shots fired. Rook takes rook, and he took the bishop. Yeah.
Okay, he took the bishop. Oh, okay.
You want to keep that pre-move?
Nah. C5, so that means D5 is hanging. His queen's on D2, bishop on E1, pawn on D4. He plays C5. Okay, there's a pawn on D4, there's a pawn on D5, C5, and B4.
30 seconds left.
I'm gonna just snatch that boy, huh? Knight takes D5, bro. got a pawn on c5, b4. I got a pawn on d4, d6. Knight on d5, bishop g7, queen on d7. You have a queen on d2, bishop e1, rook on a1. I have a rook on a8 still. B pawns.
Take and take and it takes, I take it, takes, take and take and it takes, I take it.
Oh, that's terrible. Hold on. That's terrible. Pawn d3, that should be GG. Oh, okay, trying to be tricky. Look at him with the little trick. I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna take that with the pawn. He tricky. He look at him. He thought I wasn't gonna see that. Rook e1.
Yeah, I mean, your block.
Okay. All right. So let's go. Rook takes e1 check first. After bishop takes b2.
Goodness. I knew that. I didn't know he saw that. I didn't know he saw that. That's the whole point. Yeah.
That's it? Resignation?
That's it.
Let's go! Let's go!
Welcome back, everyone, to the 2025 Chessable Masters as part of the Champions Chess Tour with qualification path to the Esports World Cup. Grandmaster Mon Hambleton, Women's Grandmaster Dina Belenkaya. Dina, we have Armageddon coming up, as well as more matches in the winner's bracket, but we have to talk Armageddon first. The bids are in, which means we can announce Jan Nepomniachtchi has actually bid 10 minutes. He just said, give me the white pieces with a bid like that, basically. Vladislav Artemiev, his opponent, bid 8 minutes, which means he will start with 8 minutes and get the black pieces. In our other Armageddon, we had Vyacheslav Duda bid 8 minutes and 2 seconds for the black pieces, and he will get them because Wei Yi bid 9 minutes and 48. So Wei Yi, Jan Nepomniachtchi will take white, Artemiev and Duda with black. And honestly, Dina, we kind of have the same match about to happen. 10 minutes against 8 minutes.
Yeah, I wonder what was going through Wei Yi's head when he was putting 948. Was that a troll move in regards of, I just want to play white, and then white, like those 12 seconds, did he really think it was making a difference? I think he's just has a good sense of humor.
Well, I think 948 is actually an incredibly clever bid personally, because if he was playing against Jan Nepomniachtchi, who bid 10 minutes, then he would get to claim the black pieces with 948. You know, maybe this is just a genius move, because I think he's really taking into account that if someone bids 10 minutes against him, he's ready to almost start with his full time. So I thought that was kind of a genius bid, but nevertheless, it worked out the exact same way.
Well, I think we are gonna see what it will take him to by the way how the game is gonna go. And we do have two other games that we are gonna be paying attention just as much, because the two kings of chess, Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura, are playing their round 3 of the winners bracket.
All right, well, let's jump into things here. Bring some of these games up. Obviously, these matches are underway. Let's have a look at Nepo maybe to start off. Nepo against Artemiev. And the reason why I wanted to just jump into that is because I'd like to see what Nepo is feeling right now. He's the only one that bid 10 minutes, which is such an interesting bid. He was not messing around. He absolutely wanted to play white. Why do you think that is, Dina? Is he just confident in his ability? Is he looking at the match so far and thinking, well, we both won a game, so if someone's going to keep winning and I have to win, I may as well take white with more time?
Yeah, and look at this queen on h5 that Nepo just threw into his opponent's territory. Doesn't he know that you don't develop the queen while your bishop is not still yet developed, and then your rook? What does he want? Is there some ideas in the air such as knight f5 and then bishop takes g5, but then the queen takes g5? Oh, and then the knight e7 just happened, which is apparently missing the pawn on f7.
I really wonder with this bishop takes f7 move, if you go back a couple moves, was it just queen h5 played? Like, because yeah, in this position, bishop takes f7, you're pinned. So I thought that queen h5 was a way of saying, okay, I'm threatening your pawn, now I'm not pinned. And it honestly looks like Artemiev just missed it, just completely didn't see it. So which is a shocking miss at that level. And I guess one of the best starts you could hope for Nepo. He took the white pieces and he's making it look like an unbelievably smart decision.
Absolutely, and sometimes, it might be like a trick, like a visual trick, because you remember that the pawn was not being able to take because of the pin, and now just one thing changes and you just don't adjust to that change. You just think as if things were the same as last time, but yes, the pawn was very much available, and now knight to f6. Well, good thing for black is that they're trying to compensate by the weakness of the light squares, putting the bishop on h3, and it's not like white can just take that bishop and put it on g2.
And here's what you need to know about Jan Nepomniachtchi. He's one of the fastest players in the world. I'm not talking necessarily about time scrambles at the end. I'm just talking in general. His average move time is very, very low. He just doesn't spend a lot of time. So if he starts the game a couple minutes ahead, it feels like something you're never going to catch up to him with. So I definitely think that Nepo, up that time, up that pawn, is looking really good here, Dina, to win this game. And I don't know about you, but I'd love to get back in the bird's eye view, make sure we don't miss any action on any of these boards.
Yeah, we have so many things going on at the same time. There's Hikaru Nakamura versus Alireza Firouzja, who are actually tied. And I see Wei Yi with versus young Krzysztof Duda, and the last time we were at the bird's eye view, I noticed that Wei was actually in a big trouble according to the eval bar, but it looks like things have kind of smoothened back to normal as we speak.
Yeah, that game looks like one that definitely could get exciting. But because we're in the Armageddon mode for the players in the losers bracket, I want to get to those games when they get exciting. So why don't we start at the top there with the Magnus Carlsen against Arjun? I mean, this is liquid against Gen G. I feel like this is the place to be, at least to start things off. We remember that Magnus has a 1.5 to half lead, which means that a win right here immediately wins this match.
Oh yeah, and yet another active queen that we see on the c5 square. Wondering what this one has forgotten here, probably defending e5, and also, is that a thing to protect the knight from doubling the pawns?
Yeah, I look at a position like this and, well, I was about to say, not move b4. I was maybe going to make a lot of suggestions. Don't think b4 was on my mind. This is a Magnus Carlsen exclusive here. That pawn is hanging in a number of different ways, but it's the pin from the bishop on b5 to the rook on e8 that makes a move like this playable, and the engine seems to agree with it.
And the interesting thing is that after queen takes b4, there's probably just simple bishop takes c6, pawn takes, and then the e5 pawn is falling, and the c6 pawn is kind of in danger, although things are edgy here because black also is targeting the e4 pawn up, and this is what just happened on the board. Queen takes b4, bishop takes c6, pawn takes c6, and knight takes e5.
Yeah, and just looking at how the pawn structure is, this definitely looks like something that the engine could say is about equal, but Magnus Carlsen is one of the best in the world at taking these positions and turning them into something. So I don't think this is a problem for Arjun, but just the player that he's up against is he's so good at playing these positions.
I wonder how Magnus, though, is gonna try to... Well, probably Magnus doesn't need to win in this game, technically, because even a draw is good enough, as Magnus is the one who takes the lead. So he probably doesn't care that much. The position that we see right now is more or less equal, and White has probably a slight edge with this pass pawn, potential pass pawn, but let's not forget that... Oh, my god, I was just gonna say the bishop against knight, but look at this knight d5.
Wow, that deserves the double exclamation mark. And you look at the eval, the engine bar didn't even move. So this is a move that is completely brilliant. It's leaving a knight hanging for absolutely nothing, it seems. And the engine is like, yeah, congratulations, it's still equal. So you're hardly rewarded for it. But let's have a look. Bishop takes the knight on c6. The knight is going to grab the pawn on c7. Obviously, you're going to take one of these rooks, and normally you would never offer two minor pieces, in this case, two knights, just for a rook and a pawn. That's not something you do. But Magnus, I believe, correctly evaluates that a pawn on the outside is absolutely worth it. So, wow, this is something that he's trying to make work. Probably going to play a5 at the end, and I mean, normally the pieces are good here, Dina, but I do agree that pawn on the outside like that is really tough for the pieces to handle.
Yeah, and usually they say if you are on the rook side against the two minor pieces, you do want to go into the endgame and trade as much as you can. And the biggest advantage your rook can actually have over these two bishops is when all other pieces are exchanged, meaning even this rook versus the rook on a8. So yeah, looking at this position, it does make sense, but it's a very interesting decision. Almost a little bit ambitious, but you know, Aman, it reminds me of those situations whenever you need a draw, you still don't want to play for a draw. You want to play your best chess and play for a win and push, because then you will have more leverage to mercy your opponent to a draw.
Agree. This looks like a position where Magnus is slightly better. As I said, he's an absolute expert at these positions. He's taken this outside pass pawn in the material imbalance that I feel he can maybe win, and it seems like he probably won't lose. So really good position for Magnus Carlsen to be in, considering the match situation where a win immediately sends Arjun to the loser's bracket. So why don't we go back to our bird's eye view? This one looks like very imbalanced. Chances for Magnus to potentially win that outright. I saw that Hikaru made a draw. I don't know what you make of that, with the white pieces against Alireza. Probably if I'm Alireza, I'm feeling pretty good about that, but honestly, not a super interesting game there. They made a draw very, very quick.
Yeah, and I see a certain edge for Vladislav Artemiev against Jan Nepomniachtchi, and let's remind everybody that this is an Armageddon. Something tells me, oh my goodness, bishop to g4, look at that. A brilliant move, putting the bishop right in front of the pawn. What do you make of it?
Bishop g4, I mean, we're seeing brilliancies all over the place. This move threatened knight to h3, so that was the intention. If the bishop was captured, the knight would go to h3, and that would be a fork on the king and the white rook, which was on f2 just a move ago. So really clever idea there by Artemiev, and you see the evaluation really going in Artemiev's favor. Remember, this is Armageddon, people, which means that Artemiev actually has a better position, and if he draws it, he still wins the match, which means we're now getting into a situation, Dina, where you have to win on time if you're Nepo. I mean, maybe he can recover this position, but I think time is his best opportunity.
And I was just gonna add, remember how everything started? Jan had 2 or even 3 minutes extra on the clock, and he grabbed a free pawn that was blundered by Artemiev. It was the f7 pawn. So the moment we glance away, all the tables turn, and this is what we have right now. And I was just gonna add, Aman, you mentioned how Jan is incredibly fast, incredibly good at making quick decisions, but this is also his weakest side, because sometimes he would just make those mistakes by rushing a little bit too much.
You're absolutely right. Live by the sword, die by the sword. That is very much, I mean, he might even have a sword behind him on cam there. I'm not too sure. But that is how Nepo plays. And when it's working, you just feel like this guy's unstoppable. And when it's not working, it's so easy to be critical. So I don't know. I don't know, Dina, but at the moment, he's going to have to find a way to probably use time to his advantage here. He's got a ton of extra time, more than 3 minutes. And remember, guys, there is no increment. That time is never going back up.
Yeah, so Vladislav Artemiev only has 1 minute and 44 seconds to convert this advantage. Oh, a perpetual?
Well, perpetual is obviously something that wins the game immediately here for Artemiev. So kind of clever there to go for it, knowing that that has to be taken and Nepo doesn't have any opportunity to do otherwise. So this could be a big knockout. Remember, we're in the loser's bracket here, and Artemiev can knock out one of the top dogs in the entire competition, Jan Nepomniachtchi.
Yeah, Jan definitely has just to hold. That's all he needs here. No draws, no perpetual, and not lose immediately. Just let the time run, and also, of course, just try to keep up with the position, not simplify too much. I would say Jan needs to take his time because he's got way too much time.
Well, that's not going to work for him. With a minute left, it looks like Artemiev is up against it. Let's jump to the bird's eye view here, Dina. There's lots going on. I just want to make sure people are up to date with the recent position in Magnus's game. It's probably just a technique thing, so I don't know that it's the one to jump to right away, but he's got a rook for a bishop here, and he's just putting on, that clinic, the squeeze. He can close out this match right here, but we have players being eliminated from the competition. Remember, even if Arjun loses to Magnus here, he only goes to loser's bracket. We have Armageddon games in progress where people are about to leave the competition. So where would you like to go, Dina?
We definitely have to go back to one of the Armageddon games.
Well, we just take a look at Nepomniachtchi and Artemiev. Let's jump into Wei Yi against Duda and just have a look at what we've got there. The only one we haven't dropped in on, it definitely looks like with the draw odds for Duda in this position, and the fact that, remember, he's not even down time. White started with some extra time in this one, and he's not even down any time anymore. You have to be pretty happy here if you're playing with the black pieces.
Yeah, it's a very interesting setup here, as White has these super weak pawns on h3 and h2 being double pawns, and the bishop has to defend the h2 pawn, but at the same time, the knight has to defend the d4 pawn. If that falls, then White would have a more active king. And look at this, g4 offering to trade White's weakness. Probably the idea is that after h takes g4, black wants to take with the f pawn and then really win this h2 pawn so that this h pawn of black can move towards the queen.
Yeah, in this case, I'm looking at the position, and yeah, d4 is about to fall. There's not much you can do about it, but I don't know that it's a pawn you can actually take. So we see him actually avoiding it, knowing that he needs to find a way to win this game. So he wants to hang on to h2. Oof, this position looks to me like big advantage for Duda, considering the match situation. But let's maybe jump back to our bird's eye view. I'm not seeing too much going on here, and the players also have a couple minutes left. So a little bit more exciting maybe is the time scramble that's emerging in Nepo's game against Artemiev, just because, once again, Magnus is putting on a clinic in his game in the winner's bracket. So why don't we stick with Nepo and Artemiev, the seemingly more exciting, because who doesn't want to watch someone, fight for their life in a time scramble?
I'm sorry, Aman, but wasn't Yan just completely losing in this game, and now he's an extra pawn in the queen endgame?
Let's remember, this is Nepo. He lives by the sword, die by the sword. That's exactly what he's doing. He's using time to his advantage. He was up time, he was down on the position, so that's exactly what he did. He played fast, and his opponent didn't find the correct continuation. That's all. That's classic Nepo.
The only thing Nepo needs to be careful of is that he cannot allow any perpetual from the black side, but Nepo has so much time. Vladislav is not gonna be able to figure this out.
Yeah, obviously a draw here would be great for black, but not only are you probably not achieving the draw on the board, but it won't really matter anyway because of the time situation. So I think Nepo knows exactly what he's doing. He can probably even start moving the king. He just has to make sure not to blunder any 3-time repetition. That would be the worst thing to do here.
I was just about to say neither threefold repetition or perpetual, but Vladislav has only 11 seconds. And one more thing I will add, whenever you are playing a queen endgame with an extra pawn, the plan is actually to, oh my god, look at that.
He realized he blundered checkmate. It was
Oh my
so
God.
insane. A couple
Queen
moves
F6
ago,
and Queen F8.
he actually blundered checkmate. The entire game could have ended. Nepo is about to win this game, but he's hanging his head because he knows he just lost it. We have to go back and show that as soon as this ends. Wow. Nepo just won with the white pieces, but he looks like he lost. He's so like, all he can do is think about that checkmate that he just blundered.
Let me show it to everybody. It was just here with...
Oh my god, that is insane. Because that would have been a checkmate with damn near seconds on the clock for Artemiev. He would have knocked out Nepo. That's unbelievable to miss that in that moment, and he's in shock. But you know what? We'll go to the games that are in progress. Don't want to stay here too long. That was a crazy moment. Let's take a look at some of the games here. It looks like Magnus is probably about to win that one. So shall we go to our Armageddon where we may lose a player here?
Absolutely, and look at this Wei Yi versus Jan Krzysztof Duda position where black has an extra knight and this is gonna be a draw. I'm so sorry, but black is winning the matchup.
That means Wei Yi is gone, and we need to go to our Magnus Carlsen game, the last one in progress. He's been up in exchange for an extremely long time. We just lost a player in that one. That was Wei Yi with the white pieces. Obviously, it feels weird to say, well, the game was a tie. How did we lose a player? That is what Armageddon is. He started with more time on the clock. And can Magnus win this incredibly tricky position? It looked like it was all but certain. But in the final moments here, Dina, it feels like Magnus is... You're starting to wonder, hang on a sec, is this actually winning?
Wow. How
This is unbelievable.
can Magnus Carlsen not win an exchange up endgame? And then I'm thinking to myself, I was just studying these endgames, and yes, in fact, there are many ways where this can actually be a draw, but it's incredible. It demands so much technique. And speaking of technique, right now, as we speak, this is a fortress. White cannot push a pawn without losing it.
And he's just going to give it up. And Magnus is now trying his best. He can maybe win this on the clock. Also, still possible to win on the board. He cannot believe, because I guarantee you that this was winning just a few moves prior, but even Magnus Carlsen can slip up. He looked like he was doing it perfectly, but got to hand credit over to Arjun, absolutely never giving up. And he's managing to take this into a drawn position. Let's see if he can hold it and complete an epic defense.
Yeah, and I have to highlight that the right plan of defense in these positions, when playing with a king against and a bishop against the rook, you gotta put the king in the right corner. And in this case, it's actually the opposite color of the bishop, so that the bishop can always defend your king against a checkmate. And right now, the only thing that Magnus can try to do is actually to push this game into less than 50 moves before black runs out of time.
Yep. It's important to play super quick here because of the element of time. And when you're up, rook for a bishop here as Magnus is, you definitely don't feel that bad playing it on. So he's going to use maybe time to his advantage, but I think that Arjun is doing a phenomenal job so far.
Yeah, honestly, there isn't much to do other than to blunder accidentally, but that's why you have 20 seconds. Something tells me this is going to be a draw before the timer goes out.
Yep, I wouldn't be surprised here. 18 seconds apiece, and honestly, as the side with the rook, you might just end up losing on time because your moves are harder to make. In that case, it would be a draw though, so I think we're getting that result almost no matter what. It's good. These moves are going to be intense though. These last ones here, we're probably very close to 50 moves. I would say these are the ones to watch out for. Don't blunder that bishop. Yes, and we are close to 50. Whew.
Well. And that means that Magnus still has to play yet another game against Arjun Urgaisi because the score is 2-1 and it is best of 4.
And Magnus can't believe it. He's just shaking his head on the camera there because he knows that that was a winning position and he's just trying to figure out where he went wrong. Arjun, unbelievable defense. I can't imagine how difficult it was to turn that lost position into a draw. Let's have a look at what that does to our bracket. Magnus Carlsen still leads against Arjun Urgaisi in the winner's bracket. Obviously a draw there. Doesn't really hurt his chances going forward, but he could have ended the match outright. So if Arjun wins the next game, he'll really be looking back on that moment. Hikaru and Alireza, they drew their game super quick. Don't know if that was, the right strategy with Hikaru, I believe, having the white pieces, but we'll see in this last game whether we're going to get an Armageddon or if one of these players wins outright. So we head down to the losers bracket, and Dina, now we can see exactly the results of those final 2 matches. Nepomniachtchi wins. He took the white pieces, and he moves on to face Esipenko. Meanwhile, Duda, although it was tied, he had the black pieces. That's how Armageddon works, and he's on to play against Yu Yangyi.
Honestly, I'm glad for Duda because he put 10 minutes and it was worth it. And so Yu Yangyi, and I'm curious how those two are gonna be playing. But as we speak, we already have the next 2 games starting, which are Magnus Carlsen versus Arjun, round number 4, and same for Hikaru and Firouzja. Where shall we go first?
Well, I mean, let's just go back to where we just were. Magnus Carlsen, Arjun Urgaisi. Let's jump right in here, everybody. We have games back on. There's really no rest. The esports format is unrelenting, and I don't mind it one bit. Magnus Carlsen is looking to, hold on at this point. All he needs is a draw, right? Let's remember that match situation. He only needs a draw in order to send Arjun Urgaisi to the losers bracket.
Yep, and right now, as we speak, this is Alireza Firouzja. I'm slightly confused because Alireza looks different.
I believe that this is the Hikaru and Alireza game, and whether the cameras are right or not, it doesn't really matter because I'm looking at that position and I already know that's the exact same position that they played last time. So we are looking at Alireza against Hikaru, and they are playing the exact same game that they did previously. So that makes a little bit more sense. Little outfit change there, and Hikaru is back to normal. But that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, and the great thing is that I think you got the answer to your question. Instead of worrying about b5 pawn, instead of capturing on c6, this time white plays f4 and now is facing. And I think last time we had f3. We definitely had f3 kicking the bishop on d7, and then c4 protecting the pawn on b5. But now white goes f4. This is the deviation from the line, and c takes b5. A takes b5. White says, I am not afraid of your a4, and if you dare attacking my bishop, see what happens next after bishop d1.
Yeah, so the interesting thing about this is that the bishop wasn't kicked back. I wonder which of these players actually looked at the line, because when you're playing a match like this, you don't always have the time to go back and look exactly at every single variation. You don't know which ones you're going to play again. But clearly, looks like Hikaru has definitely checked and concluded that, yeah, this is the way to play it differently. This is the way to improve it. and he has taken on b5. He has played a4, so we have a completely different way of playing the exact same position. After bishop to d1, I will say that if white's pawns start to get all on light squares, that's pawn on c3 to c4, pawn on f4 to f5, that all of a sudden looks like a pretty good position. So I do think that Hikaru needs to open this position up a little bit. That means pawn takes on f4, or maybe pawn d6 to d5. I think we need to see it open up because white's king could get in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, and something tells me that this a4 pawn in some cases could be just better not existing there at all, because the pawn is actually blocking the rook, and it's also sort of making this knight being stuck to protect the pawn. And this is the middle of the game, so it's not yet a real pass pawn. It's not yet a real danger. And that's a very interesting parameter. You know, sometimes you'd wish, why not just to put this pawn on c5 and block the a3 bishop forever? But we'll see what happens. That means to me that black kind of wants to go to the endgame.
Agree. Yeah, and there's the move that I was really hoping for, the move d5. Even, you know, you might look at the e5 pawn and think, wait a minute, that's a free pawn that can be taken, but the knight can jump into g4. There's also other pawns to be taken. I think this is exactly the way Hikaru needs to play this position. Personally, I would be a little bit nervous here as Alireza navigating this open position. But it's not to say that it's bad. It's just I feel that Black's play makes a lot of sense here.
Yeah, totally. And now knight g4 just happened on the board as you predicted, attacking the e5, attacking the f2. Actually, not attacking f2. Never mind. There is a queen protecting. That's an easy miss. But yeah,
Well,
attacking
it's
the
still
e5.
it's still attacking it. You know, just because it's defended doesn't mean it's not being attacked. So, you know, take credit there. That's still a square that, for example, if Black's bishop takes on a3, it's important to remember if the queen takes back, there you go. Knight f2 makes a lot of sense there. So I think it's still really important to notice that stuff because it ties white's queen down to that defense. But Dina, with this position opening up, we clearly see the picture here. Let's go ahead and get the picture from the other ongoing game. That's Arjun against Magnus Carlsen. And for that, we can jump back to our bird's eye view. We got both games on the screen. These are both winners bracket games. We're in the final game of 4. Will we see Armageddon? Will one of these players win immediately? Everyone that's involved in the match can win right here, except Arjun. Arjun needs to win in order to force Armageddon. He can't win the match outright. So let's see what he can do here. He's got the white pieces. It's a good place to be. Dina, what do you make of the position that we have at the moment?
I was just gonna say yet another active queen by white here on e6, but now the moment I thought about it, it got retreated to e3, which is probably solid, and now black is attacking the f file with the f2 pawn. I will say black has a very good potential with pushing e5, then the d6 would be a little bit weak, but still, it would be a pawn in the center. Also, another alternative is to put the knight on e5, and overall, it looks like black pieces are actually more active. Yeah, just because there is more pressure on the king. I think black has a very comfortable play here, although the evil bard does not necessarily agree with that.
Well, one thing that that black has, which you mentioned for viewers earlier, was a couple of pawn islands. So 3 of them to be exact. And that immediately makes me think that, okay, white has some chances here based on that, just structurally, something to play for. But I think you do point out something important, which is that the activity of the pieces, the knight on c5, bishop on c6, both seem to be a little bit better than their counterparts on c3 and g4. Now, position structurally seems to favor Arjun, but the quality of the pieces at the moment seems to favor Magnus. So I think it's a really interesting struggle that we've got here. But if you ask me, Dina, if I'm in a position that I have to win, I would rather have some good and some bad about my position. Because that means that the imbalances are things you can play for. You play to your strengths.
Yeah, and imagine I just lend my knight from c5 with e6 to d4. What would you say about that then?
That I would be quite bothered. First of all, looks like a great square for the knight. I would probably need to trade that off, right? Knight to e2. I really can't deal with that knight on d4 for too long. One thing that white might be intending is maybe even pushing the pawns up, but I think what we're going to see from Arjun is some slower play. structurally he's better. So he just needs to improve the quality of his pieces and not rush anything. So I think we'll see some slower play from Arjun.
Well, that means that we shall just move on to yet another game we have. The only other game that we have right now as we speak, which is Hikaru Nakamura versus Alireza Firouzja.
Yeah, we've only got 2 games here, so we can really focus in on these two. Of course, having said slow play, Arjun goes for b4. Personally, I don't know about that one. I think it could simplify things quicker than he might like. And remember that he needs to win that one left side of your screen. So we'll see if that pays off for him. If ever a situation where we're wondering, do we trust Aman Hambleton or do we trust Arjun Erigaisi? The answer is we trust Arjun Erigaisi. Just want to be clear about that.
Always trust Aman.
No, you have it wrong, but it's okay. We'll work on that. Back to this game. Alireza, Hikaru. The knight has improved itself all the way, by the way, from f6 to g4 to e3 to c4. The knight has gone on a journey. Advantage by the engine for Alireza, but this is a position where somehow Alireza has managed to not move either knight. He's got them both on their starting squares. He's got the rook on a1 on the starting square. And you're telling me that he's supposed to have a clear advantage here, according to the engine?
Well, it's not a factor, but the knight on g1 probably was moved to e2 and then moved back to g1. Still makes it a very bad knight. Yeah, if only Alireza could put the queen back on c1 on d1, we would have a new freestyle set up right away. But hey, this is just a middle game position, who would have guessed? And then there are these massive pawns on d5 and d5 and d4. I'm not comfortable with that. I understand it's just one of those kinds, yet another pawn structure versus piece activity. That's what I make out of this position.
Yeah, well, the weird thing about Hikaru's move there, it's something to really pay attention to, is the pawn on d5 could not have been captured because the knight on c4 is hanging. So Alireza has this rather amazing looking pawn structure. c3 connected all the way to d6. Everything's protected, but it can be broken up with the move f6 if ever needed. And I do think that the white king in the corner is something right now that's being held together by the queen. Queen goes to g2. This is the only reason, by the way, that it's not completely losing. You're covering that king in the corner, but such a weird game for Alireza. His pieces have not moved, and the activity of Hikaru's pieces is making me feel like this is a position that, despite the engine maybe saying that Alireza was better, maybe saying that it's around even, I almost disagree and feel like Hikaru has a tremendous shot here.
Yeah, and I do want to point out that there was a day I said that a5, a4 pawn was not a real pass pawn because it was blocked by all the pieces. But just the moment I said that, black played d5 and traded this dark squared bishop, removing the blockader of the pass pawn, and now being on a3, this black pawn is actually really dangerous, and it's finally taking the lead that it's supposed to do.
Well, yeah, and also congratulations, Alireza. I'm not sure, but I think that might have been the first time that knight moved. It looks like it really did leave the last rank. Such an interesting imbalance here because the a3 pawn is going to be well defended forever. The knight on c4 is going to stay there. He's got another one that he can replace it with. And what do we make of this? We've got connected pawns in the middle of the board, and then we've got connected pawns on the outside of the board on the queen side for Hikaru. So, I mean, this is one of those positions that the computer says equal, but I think we can understand that someone, honestly, is probably going to win this game.
Absolutely. There is no draw happening in this one. And I do have to remind us that black, in the space of the last 3 minutes, grabbed not 1 but 2 pawns for free, and that still make the position even.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Now it's just, it's not about material anymore. It's about the quality of the passed pawns. d6 looks very scary, but the pawn on a3 is backed up by the rook. The queen's involved as well. Even though it says equal here, I'm very intrigued by this game. Shall we go back to the bird's eye view to make sure we don't lose track of the Magnus position? Because we want to see whether Arjun has generated winning chances. Unfortunately, a draw is going to be insufficient for Arjun. He needs a win here, so we may see him start to go all out. This position, Dina, that I'm seeing does not look like one that he's going to be that happy with. This is kind of why I was saying earlier that Magnus would be a little bit happy that Arjun was kind of going quickly. Let's see if he can turn this into something, because you know what? Arjun is not someone that I will ever count out after I saw him defend that last game against Magnus.
Oh yeah, and I was just gonna say, look at this king on f4. With the king so active in the endgame, I have nothing to worry about. And this e3 pawn is extremely powerful, extremely strong. It is restricting the king. Now the dream come true would be to put rook on a2, and then you just pretend that b7 is not a problem, although it could actually be a certain headache, as b6 would be also heading to the promotion square.
Yeah, at this point, it's counterplay from Magnus, right? He's coming in with the rook down to a1, a2, and he's got that really strong pass pawn on e3. The king on f4 is also ready to go into g3 and just capture every single pawn that Arjun has. Now, on the flip side, white can go c5, white can go c6, and create a pass pawn of his own. So it really is just a test of quality. Which pass pawns are going to be more dangerous, as I can update that in the other game, right when we said it was balanced, and I'll eat my words when I said that it was going to be a decisive result, it was a draw. That's right, which means we are guaranteed to get an Armageddon, but it also means we know exactly where we have to be on this board right here.
How the heck? But you're gonna explain to me later.
Bishop to b1, and what's happening here? Bishop b1 is almost trapped at this point. Honestly, it's a very strange move, but where else was the bishop going to go? c8? I don't know. The black bishop looks really misplaced here. Even though Magnus is probably doing quite fine, the bishop is really bothering me.
Well, it looks like white has a sort of perfect fortress, and I dare you to try to defend after rook to h2, trying to reroute the rook from the other side and check on h1.
I like that. I definitely do. White's position, it feels like the king is in real danger here, and what white has is the move c6. Like, that's the main thing for white. Also, at some point, you could give check to the black king with like rook d4. That could be a nice way to kick the king away.
This position.
I was going to say, what you're outlining there, a potential repetition, no good for Arjun. So he has such a difficult job, because he needs to make sure that he's playing in a way where he never allows a draw to happen.
And these moves did happen on the board after king takes f3. Look at the evil bar. Black has just grabbed the pawn, but apparently it's no good for them, because now the rook is going to kick the king out, and then white is going to focus on the b7. Real chances for Arjun to strike back and get a win and even the score, and then we would have a second Armageddon. That is definitely something we're here for.
And I think what Magnus might have been counting on was potentially a move like bishop to f5. Not right now, but I think he was maybe looking at c6 with e2 coming. Instead, bishop f5 is not going to be the way to play anymore, because you're not going to have time to push e2. So Magnus is realizing his aggressive king placement, he now probably has to retreat. And then what's stopping just c6 and that pass pawn from rolling? Magnus is shaking his head. Are we going to see Arjun magic again?
That would be insane. Everything is protected. White is so passive and yet so strong, because black has no way to break through with this pawn on a3, with this king on g3, with this rook on h1, and the bishop. All 4 pieces in the opponent's territory. Man, what else do you need?
Amazing, amazing, and he's done it. Arjun, representing Gen G, has beaten Magnus in that game. The pawn was going to queen with a check to Magnus's king. He can't believe it. Magnus shaking his head. We are seeing Armageddons in both matches in the winner's bracket.
What? Looking at the match play, we have now 2 more Armageddons. Aman, is this something you were looking for?
Absolutely. Absolutely. At this point, with 2 Armageddons coming, we are going to get bids in from the players, right? Magnus gets beaten on demand from Arjun. That is so insane to beat a player of that caliber. Remember, Magnus could have not only put the game away in the previous one, and I was saying he might look back on that moment, that missed opportunity with the extra pawn and rook against the bishop, and think to himself, man, I can't believe that I didn't win that. And will it matter? Of course it does. Arjun wins on demand, and now he has a chance to send Magnus down to the loser's bracket. So this is going to be insane. We'll let the bids get in from the players for Armageddon. We have 2 coming your way. But before we go to a break, I want to remind you guys about Lo-Fi Girl and Chess.com. Lo-Fi Girl is the perfect YouTube channel for chill music to study, relax, or play chess. Had over 14 million subscribers and 24/7 live streams. This year, they teamed up with us at Chess.com to drop a specially curated playlist for the Champions Chess Tour. Check out the playlist on YouTube and streaming platforms. You can use !Lo-Fi in chat. Guys, we have 2 Armageddons, some of the best players in the world coming your way right after this break.
Do you think cheating is being taken seriously in over-the-board chess? Seriously enough?
Absolutely not.
True.
Do you think the online cheating paranoia is overblown or appropriate?
Tough question. The answer is somewhere in the middle. It's not being taken seriously enough, but there's also too much paranoia.
He's telling the truth.
So let's talk a little bit about that, even though we're moving the pieces. When you say that more could be done, do you have a specific list for Chess.com?
A specific list. I mean, I think there should be a way to look at the performances of players who are not, say, up-and-coming kids specifically. And when you see certain players being defeated consistently, like Nepo or myself or Fabiano, I just think over our careers of having played chess, it seems that sometimes it's happening more frequently than it should, is what I would say. And I don't know how you deal with that, but I do believe it's happening more than it should.
Let's switch it up a little bit. Do you ever sing in the shower?
Not anymore, no.
True.
Are you really worth $50 million?
No.
I don't know. He's made a lot of money on stocks. He might be lying.
Lying.
He's lying. Okay. No, all right. Well, are you the best streamer in the world?
Yes.
No, that's a lie.
Okay. I guess I didn't clarify chess streamer.
Exactly.
I should have clarified chess streamer. Okay. Are you the best chess streamer?
Yes.
Yes, with some ambiguity.
With some, okay. Yeah, well, there's a lot of context then. All right. I'll let you make a few more moves.
Sure.
I kind of need you to get a good position against me, or it's gonna go forever. Okay.
I have this feeling this is not going well. It's making me wonder if I should become a career criminal now.
Okay.
The king is never going to escape, and so, I mean, at the very least, it's going to be a draw, and a draw is enough to go through and become...
Wesley makes the draw.
Yeah.
And Wesley's the champion.
Is Wesley so simply the best online rapid player in the world right now, David?
It does look that way, Kaya.
Over-the-board tournaments are becoming less and less ever since the pandemic started.
The pandemic was a huge crisis because we book out the calendar the year before. Every month is booked, one by one. You know, I was crossing stuff off. But then the online thing came from Chess24 and then Chess.com, and he had never really played much online before that. And he was very nervous about it. But he found out that he actually was really good at it. He had no idea he would be a great player online. None of us did. We were all, what? So every setback he's had, I keep pointing out to him, look at the great things that have come from it. During the pandemic, he made his only Chessable course. Never would have done that. But he made one of their most successful courses ever. So there were things that when he got stretched and pushed, he had to do that matured him. And in the last couple of years, all we do is go to tournaments, pack up and go to the next one. And we're grateful for the work for him, very grateful. It's wonderful. But I wondered how it was impacting his chess. He never prepped anymore. He had to sleep between every tournament. And I said, let's go for walks, let's swim, let's do things that your brain can repair and restabilize itself.
I think you always need a break. Like I've heard many kids, they said they work 10 to 12 hours a day in chess. And I just find that totally insane. Like, I don't think anyone can work 10 to 12 hours every day in one thing, even for a month. Like, you're just gonna blow up. So I feel like you should put in some very dedicated hours and then, enjoy life, exercise. Yeah, swimming is one of the things that I enjoy. When I'm in good shape, I could swim 2 miles in 90 minutes. My sister Abigail, she actually taught me how to swim 10 years ago.
When I first met Wesley, we brought him to the pool when he first came to visit us in Minnesota, and I thought he knew how to swim. He just sank like a rock as soon as he got into the pool.
The first experience was quite intimidating because I had a traumatic experience when I was very little in the Philippines, where I jumped the pool and almost drowned. So after that, I wasn't really taught swimming, but I've always wanted to learn, and it's a very good exercise. Most of the chess players swim also. I think Fabi swims, Bobby Fischer, of course, Gary also used to swim, and even Hans Niemann swims, so everyone gotta do it. You guys have a race?
Sometimes.
She's still faster, she's lighter. Also, she doesn't usually eat anything before going to the pool. Meanwhile, I have breakfast and oatmeal and the hot chocolate. So
Yeah, we're down for a little race.
She's the favorite though. I'm more, like I run marathon, not 100-meter race. There's definitely room for improvement, but it's fun. You shouldn't really beat your teacher. I'm a gentleman. I let her win.
Now, Magnus Carlsen arrived to Friday's events in jeans.
They just want to be sure this is jeans or not. They agreed that it's not a jeans. They're just the trousers.
Magnus is showing up fashionably late. Probably some fashionable jeans as well.
Welcome back. 2025 Chessable Masters continues. Grandmaster Mon Hambleton, Women's Grandmaster Dina Balankaya. Dina, we have two huge Armageddon matches in the winner's bracket about to take place, and something unprecedented, at least for me, has happened with the bids. So let's reveal. First of all, Magnus Carlsen bid 6 minutes and 56 seconds. Arjun bid 7 minutes and 54 seconds. That means Magnus wins the bid and will get the black pieces. Arjun will have the full 10 minutes with white. Now, on the other side, we actually had the players bid the exact same number. I actually can't believe it. They both bid 6 minutes and 19 seconds. And when that happens, the players are forced to rebid. But it's just crazy to think how in tune their brains were with that. 6 minutes 19, they rebid. Hikaru bid 6 minutes and 1 second. Alireza bid 6 minutes and 7 seconds. So Hikaru gets the black pieces with 6 minutes and 1 second. Alireza, the full 10 minutes. Dina, absolute mayhem. And that was just the bidding process.
But yet another shock for us, Aman, that the position that we see on the board is the exact same. And now we have your move, the one that you were suggesting from the start. B takes C6 finally happened. And then, oh my god, things are getting so fast. I'm not even in time to comment on the moves.
And the good thing is, if anyone's wondering if we missed anything, we didn't. We joined the game after a couple of the opening moves were already played, and we missed nothing because it's the exact same. In fact, we saw the only difference right here. Pawn takes on c6. I think both players have reviewed this, right? We had a little bit of a break there, the bidding, and no doubt they knew it was possible that the colors would be the exact same. They have repeated the entire thing again. And this time, Dina, if it's a draw, obviously Hikaru is going to win the Armageddon and win the match. So pressure on Alireza to really create something. He doesn't have that draw to fall back on.
Yeah, absolutely. And we actually had Alireza yesterday on the interview, and he did say when it comes to Armageddon, he clearly prefers black because the draw is always good and he doesn't care about the time. And in this matchup, we have some of the fastest players in the world when it comes to online. And as the center is getting traded and opened up, is that time for us to take a look at another Armageddon game, which is taking place as we speak. Magnus Carlsen and Arjun Erigaisi.
Yeah, we want to make sure that we're jumping and keeping you updated on all the action. So, of course, we'll be right back there. But in this one, let's set the stage here. Magnus Carlsen, Team Liquid, black pieces. If he draws the game, he wins. But he had to take quite the time deficit to do it. So, 3 extra minutes for Arjun. And we are witnessing Arjun magic here. I mean, we talk about throwing a match. Magnus has done a little bit of that, right? Game number 3, he could have put it away. Did not. Game number 4, could have made a draw. Did not. And all of a sudden, Arjun has a chance to send Magnus to the loser's bracket.
You know, Aman, it actually occurred to me that Magnus could have considered just putting 10 minutes straight and getting white pieces because he just wasn't as good at making a draw on demand. Although the third game finished in a draw, but it seems like Magnus should just go with the mentality of winning the game, and white color is better for that.
Well, I mean, one of the pieces of advice that I've heard that you've mentioned is don't always just play for a draw. And with this long castling here, I'm feeling like Magnus only needing a draw is going for a very provocative type of move. This indicates opposite side castling. I'm looking at A3. I'm looking at B4 for white here. And Arjun representing Gen G. I could see him just going all out on the attack as he should. Plus, he needs to win the game anyway. So isn't this exactly what he needs to do?
Absolutely.
Is this Knight C5?
Yeah, I was just looking at it, and the Knight C5 is not the right move. Taking the pawn, that's what everybody would do. Just exploiting this pin. But what happens after capturing with the queen? Could that be so? Capturing with the bishop, capturing with the pawn, and then this knight? It looks like a clear pawn for white, but something is odd here.
Well, I think that Knight C5 is, I swear I've even seen this exact game before. So I think that Arjun is kind of going for it because of that. This is something new, though. Queen takes C5 is what Magnus played. The engine wanted Queen C6. I think that this is very easy to understand as a clear position for Arjun to be happy with. He's going to be able to expand. Bishop coming back to D2 and maybe B4 and expand on the queen side. He has A4, A5. Like, if I need a win, I'm up time and I have a position with opposite sides castling. Absolutely happy if you're Arjun here. And is Magnus once again putting himself in a position he shouldn't be in?
Yeah, and the king h2 is just walking out of the check. Now the e pawn is gonna go to e5. Honestly, it looks like the worst is behind and Magnus has stabilized, and that's what he needs because once again, a draw is good for him. Whoa, g5. I love that. The idea is that you cannot capture the pawn because you attack the bishop and the king, and that would be a check. tremendous check, losing the bishop. Of course, g5, bishop d2 was played, and now Magnus is going ambitious.
Well, you kind of need to be. Look, Magnus is taking that advice to heart. He's absolutely going for it here, and all he needs is a draw. This is getting really spicy here. The bishop goes back to d2. We see e5 played. We have a few more moves in this game, but you know what? Let's keep jumping back and forth between them. We're going to take a look at Hikaru's game against Alireza, because there is an advantage that's starting to open up in that one, and it is actually for Alireza with the white pieces. The time is almost even, but the moves are coming in and the attack is raging against that black king.
Oh my lands. The e5, the f5, f6 in the air, the bishop is about to check the king, and the g7 checkmate in the air in some distant future, knight g5, all sorts of jumps. And one thing I do have to highlight is that the knight is once again on b1.
Yeah, and here's the thing. If Hikaru has draw odds, this is not the position that you want. Like, congratulations. If it's a draw, you're fine. But look at this position. I mean, if this ends up in a draw, that's a masterclass on defense from Hikaru Nakamura. Alireza has an attacking mindset. Look at those two bishops aimed exactly where they need to be. F6, first move that comes to mind here. It loosens up the pawn structure. First move that I would consider.
Oh, no. And the rook on g8, protecting the g7 pawn, that's very interesting. But what about f6? Sooner or later, just destroying that pawn structure and taking the pawn on h6 and the queen on h3. I mean, if Alireza can checkmate without the rook, without the knight, wouldn't that be one of the most beautiful games we've seen so far at the Chessable Masters?
Truly, and in a great moment as well. Alireza, it's not about the time anymore. He doesn't care about that extra time that he has from having the white pieces. It's just all about punching this attack through. I'm looking at the move f6. I can't help but stare at it, because f6 right now, even if the pawn takes, maybe queen to h3, and I'm looking at the h6 pawn as a target. Queen can also go into f5 and deliver checkmate on h7. So this is looking like a position with full calculation necessary, and you can tell, it's just locking in and calculating. Alireza possibly could end it right here.
Yeah, let's just take a look. Something like queen h3 and rook g1 and knight takes... Oh.
Okay. King only because of that nasty bishop d5 check, but yeah, h6 is loose here. Queen f5 also threatens mate. Bishop takes h6, and the game should be over.
Oh.
This is exactly what I mean here. So we'll see if this f6 move gets played. To me, it looks incredibly tricky, but not chosen by Alireza. He probably couldn't get to the end of all those tricky calculations, and instead he was like, let's just go for this. But Dina, there's action everywhere. We're going all the way back to Magnus and Arjun, because the attack is raging here, but it's also going crazy on that board as well. We knew that this would happen. Look at the black king. It's in the middle of nowhere. How the heck did we get here?
All right, let me just take you 2 moves back, because last time we saw this position was after h5. And then all these sorts of things happened. White is just opened up all the position on the queen side, which they were supposed to do because it's a queen side castle. But look at this pawn on b6 and the king on c6. I am speechless.
Insane. The king is on the run here. White's king looks fairly safe. Magnus only needs a draw, but remember, he needs a draw and he's got 2 minutes. He's still down to 3 minutes from the start of the game. In terms of an Armageddon perspective, I would probably say that Arjun has done a good job here, because if you have a time advantage of 3 minutes and it's 10-7, that's way different than 4 minutes to 1 minute, for example.
And now Magnus goes with e4, trying to create a passed pawn and potentially an attack on the opponent's king, which is actually very smart. And Magnus still has 2 minutes. So yes, the 3-minute advantage is huge, but Magnus has enough to figure the position out.
Definitely does. It's rook to e1. I mean, that has a question mark by the engine, but it feels a little bit harsh to me. Lots of moves to be played here. And remember, even just some moves that repeat a little bit, not 3 times, of course, or Magnus would win. But for example, a move like rook b1. let's say the king returns, you're happy to waste time. E3, your move was played. He wants to get some threats against the white king now.
And potentially create a pass pawn and everything together. Now white can't throw a check on b7. The king would just go back, and then white probably should exploit the option of rook b8. Oh, bishop e1. Not the best option by white, although it seems so logical. Just protect that pawn and protect the king.
Yeah, the engines are so good at assessing danger, much better than humans. They'll just say, no problem. But instead, bishop e1 looks safe because you're watching over the g3 pawn. Instead, look at this. I mean, we have the most incredible pawn structure for Magnus Carlsen here. Whose king is safer? I honestly don't know.
And we shall find out right after, because something is happening on Hikaru versus Alireza.
There is so much action on both boards. You can't even keep up here. What the heck are we looking at here? Where was that attack? This is even the right move. Let's go back a few moves here. It seems that he's won the game, but what even is that?
So last time we saw this position, knight d2 was played, developing the knight, bishop d4, knight e4, putting the knight to the center, knight c5, knight takes c5, bishop takes c5, rook e1, knight c4, bishop f4, rook b8, queen h3 is a blunder because of queen h4. Oh my god, queen sacrifice, and after queen takes h4, bishop f3 would deliver a tremendous checkmate with both bishops. Oh my goodness.
God.
And
that might be one of the nicest moves that I've almost ever seen, especially in a speed chess format. It looks like a DGT error. It looks like a move that you see and you're like, oh, there must be a mistake on the board. Like it's not right. It's not delivered correctly. That move is so special, and you can tell it just stunned Alireza. But you know what? I couldn't believe that in that game, it was not f6 played by Alireza. He had the attack, but instead, I called it earlier, defensive masterclass from Hikaru. How did he pull that off?
yeah, that's something we shall find out later if we get a chance to speak to Hikaru. But right now, we need to put all our focus on Magnus versus Arjun. And something changed here. Last time we saw this position, the beautiful pawn structure occurred. But now rook b7, bishop c7, and white is trying to win that bishop. And in the meantime, black is doing checks. And once again, let us remind to everybody, perpetual draw is in favor of the former world champion Magnus Carlsen. What happens if the king goes to h3?
Yeah, I think after that, the pawn goes to g4, and white probably gets checkmated. And so instead of losing the game, he makes the draw, which is obviously pretty much like a resignation of the match. But Magnus, he's breathing a sigh of relief. He can't believe he was lucky enough to find that perpetual check in a tense position. Oof, he is really happy with that result. You can tell. And Arjun, you just have to feel for him. He really took Magnus to his limit, Dina, but it just wasn't enough.
Yeah, and I just want to show everybody this beautiful checkmate that would have occurred in case of king h3. Not that it would matter, but it would be after queen e2. And actually, I might not show you because it's only 8 moves.
Only 8? Okay, yeah. You know, if you play him quickly, I think we might have time.
And king
8
h3.
move checkmate.
And then queen. I just don't believe they would even calculate all that. I think it was just a decision based on the feeling, because worst come to worst, black story would always have a perpetual here, and that's why the game finished in a draw.
Yeah, I think Arjun knew, like, if he goes for it, he can lose, but it's definitely a draw. And if he doesn't, it's just a draw. So it's just kind of a gentleman's thing. He takes his loss based on the draw in Armageddon, and we have 2 official results after that. So let's take a look at what this means for our bracket. On the winner's side, where the action just happened, Magnus Carlsen in Armageddon. We thought that he would get it done a lot earlier in the match. Arjun from Gen G, you have to be impressed on how he took the former world champion to his limits, but it wasn't enough. Magnus Carlsen wins. He moves on to the winner's final. Hikaru Nakamura, quite literally the move of the event, maybe of the year. I am so impressed by queen h4 there, a stunner in Armageddon, and he moves on, which means our winner's final is set. It is Team Falcons, Hikaru Nakamura, and Team Liquid, Magnus Carlsen, up there in the winner's bracket, Dina.
Yeah, that's honestly, we could not have asked for a better winner's final.
Truly, there's no better way to say it. Magnus Carlsen, Hikaru Nakamura, two of the absolute best to ever do it. And remember, we still have the loser's bracket as well. So while that tantalizing match is waiting in the winner's bracket, don't forget, these guys are still fighting down here. Esipenko, Nepomniachtchi, the winner of that matchup is going to move on to play Arjun, because despite the loss, Arjun moves down to the losers only, absolutely not knocked out. Duda and Yu Yi will be battling, and the winner moves on to play Alireza. So the question remains, is it going to be one of the people that just dropped down that are going to make it back to the winners, Dina? Or is it going to be someone that's been battling in the losers bracket from the very beginning, like Nepo?
That is something we shall see very soon, but as of right now, I'm wearing my pineapple t-shirt because I'm here for Magnus versus Hikaru, and that's where my eyeballs are gonna be.
And that's where everyone's are gonna be when we come back from this very short break, so don't go anywhere, guys. We are back with the best matchups still to come in the 2025 Chessable Masters. Welcome back. It's the 2025 Chessable Masters. Grandmaster Amon Hambleton, Women's Grandmaster Dina Belenkaya. Dina, we have quite literally the match that I think everyone has been waiting for, including yourself. It is Magnus Carlsen on Team Liquid, Hikaru Nakamura on Team Falcons. It is happening. Let's take a look at the bracket. This is where things stand. Of course, we started with a whopping 16 players. We are now down to 8. We are moving.
Oh, yeah.
We are moving through. People are getting eliminated, Dina. Some players, some of the best in the world that we don't see anymore.
Such as, I mean, if I start mentioning the names, they're just countless. Very big dogs have been eliminated, such as Fabiano Caruana, Yanish Giri, definitely Vladislav Artemiev, and many more. But right now, all our eyes are gonna be on Arjun Hegaisi, who is gonna be waiting for a winner of Esipenko versus Nepo, and Duda versus Yu Yang.
Yeah, we have 2 matches happening in losers round number 3. The winner's final is decided. It's Magnus. It's Hikaru. The loser of that will drop down, but today's matches are going to be Carlsen Nakamura, Esipenko Nepomniachtchi, and Duda Yu Yang, with more action to come tomorrow. So that's where things stand at the moment. Obviously, the games are about to get underway. Hikaru is, he's moving on after that incredible move. I'm still in shock by that Queen H4 that we saw from him in Armageddon. Magnus got it done with a perpetual. It's just amazing. The best always find a way to make it happen. So we have 2 games in the losers bracket. 2 players will be eliminated. And of course, we have our super exciting winners final.
Yep, and here we go with Magnus versus Hikaru. The game has already started, and it looks like it's some kind of a Jabava London. I am personally not a fan. I say don't put the knight in front of the c2 pawn, because this pawn is supposed to go towards the center. And then I say don't move twice the developed piece, because you still have an undeveloped bishop. But hey, Magnus Carlsen, rated 2900, does not give a damn.
Yeah, he can do whatever he wants. Honestly, so can Hikaru Nakamura. It feels like they've both been doing that the entire way. And let's have a look at this game that we see right here. I'm just excited that this is still a best of 4, which means we get the maximum amount of Hikaru Nakamura and Magnus Carlsen games. I think that everyone can agree that that is the best outcome. So kind of an unusual opening from Hikaru. He's brought the knight out from G8, and then he's moved it again back to D7. So he really only has 1 piece developed. Magnus is thundering ahead. The queen comes out to F3, multi-purpose. The king wants to castle queenside, but also the pawn from G2 very often moves up G2, G4, and then even G4, G5. So it's nice that that queen on F3 is guarding the rook on H1. So very interesting stuff so far. I would say that I definitely prefer Magnus's position, but only slightly.
Yeah, and the king would probably go to the long castle, although right now, as we speak, things are getting open up on the c-file now. Queen to G3, no longer protecting the rook, no longer preparing G5, but yet another idea, targeting bishop C7? Or is it just stopping the black's bishop on F8 from developing, as the G7 pawn now needs defending?
I think you called it. Yeah, the bishop on F8 can no longer move, which means if you want to develop it, you might have to play pawn to G6. That does not look like a move you're that interested in playing, very weakening. And if you ever brought the bishop to G7, as you're indicating, maybe white even plays bishop to D6 and says, no castling on the king side for you. So this is a position that's developing. I definitely think long castle by Magnus is almost guaranteed, although, hey, you could always just play it calm with just bishop d3 short castle. I think that long castle is the more ambitious approach, but also more risky. So very soon, we'll see what type of risk Magnus is looking to take here in game number 1.
Yeah, and that means we shall take a look at 2 other games that we have going on as we speak. In fact, Jan Nepomniachtchi is battling out with Andrei Esipenko. That is a definitely interesting game. But we also have Duda versus Yu Yang. Which one is calling your name, Aman?
Well, let's jump to Yu Yang against Jan Krzysztof Duda. Of course, we're going to keep a very close eye on Magnus and Hikaru. That is definitely the place to be. But a reminder, in the losers bracket, it is 2 games, best of 2. So these games actually are a little bit more important because you get off to a win, all of a sudden, you could just draw the next game and you knock out your opponent. The reason that we want to jump right into this game, Dina, is I caught the move h4 happening, and immediately I think we're tuning in to a piece blunder from Jan Krzysztof Duda.
No freaking way.
Yep. It's unbelievable, but yes, we just tuned in. If you want to go back a couple moves, we can just explain what happened there. The queen on g5 was guarding, the knight on h5 was guarding the bishop on f5. And remember, this was a voluntary decision. Duda's position was completely 100% okay. He chose to play bishop f5. He walked in to, I hate to say an elementary tactic, but certainly one that is well below his caliber. He knows he can't be playing that way. And with elimination on the line, this is an incredibly, incredibly big blunder.
A simple deviation, as they say, distracting the king, distracting the queen from protecting the bishop. And as we see more moves coming in this game, frankly, I hate to say, but we are no longer interested.
Yeah, we had to set the stage here and just say that Yu Yang out to an incredible start. We'll monitor, but it looks like Yu Yang is out to win this one, which means let's jump back to our bird's eye view and take a look at some of the other games in progress. This one over here is the other one in the losers bracket, right? This is going to be bottom right of your screen. We just want to take in the position, see what's going on there, and then spend our time, honestly, on Carlsen versus Nakamura. So Nepo versus Esipenko. This is the other losers bracket, other best of 2 matchup. And Nepomniachtchi, he blundered that checkmate. He's kind of lucky to even be alive in this competition. But nevertheless, here he is. He's battling away against Esipenko, and have to like his chances here against his compatriot.
Yeah, lots of compatriots, honestly, taking into consideration that Vladislav Artemiev was representing the same territory. But in any case, chess is an individual sport, so everybody is on their own, and that's why it's so cruel, and that's why these players are sometimes so arrogant or confident. You call it the way you want, but confidence is important in chess. In any case, looking at the board, we have this bishop d6 attacking the knight on e5, and then potentially the rook is here as well. We have a very strong center from black with c5 and d5 that is probably about to be a little bit lighten up. And then we have this beautiful rook on b8 that is controlling the whole b file. Look at that. And you would say that black has an extra pawn island, but again, it is about piece activity, because with this king on b1, even though you say king belongs to the center of the board in the endgame, I feel like black is having a very comfortable play here.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's a lot to be said about that position, but probably because it's still in the development phase of the game. Let's jump to a game which is developing into a losing position for Hikaru Nakamura. This is Magnus jumping in with moves in the center that I think Hikaru did not anticipate. If we think about where we left it and where we are right now, the changes indicate that Magnus utilized his lead in development and opened up the entire center before Hikaru was able to react. So we're probably going to see the move long castles and e4, and we see exactly that. The bishop on f8, you highlighted it earlier, cannot move because of the g7 pawn, and this is causing Hikaru's king to be stuck in the middle of the board. Brilliancy in the center. E takes d5. Why is it a brilliancy? Because there's a knight hanging right in front of us. And he continues, I think.
Yeah, and White just does not care, and now black cannot really take the knight because of d takes e6, completely opening the king, followed by a checkmate in 2 if black were to take back that pawn. That's why black played knight f6, but now it's just d takes e6. Once again, do not care about the knight this time because the queen is pinned. That's a typical x-ray, and now knight h5 trying to attack white's king. White's queen, sorry, but queen g4, knight takes g4, e takes f7, intermezzo, checking the king, and king f7, queen f4, check, queen f6, rook takes d4, queen takes f4. We're heading to the endgame, ladies and gentlemen. Rook takes f4, king e8, bishop d3, and let's just make a count. 1, 2.
I think that the conclusion of really everything we just saw is that Magnus has converted an attack into what should be a winning endgame. It doesn't seem like much that he's up 2 pawns, considering he was absolutely laying on the pressure earlier. But at this level, that is a winning advantage. So you can see Hikaru just shaking his head on the camera. He was not happy about this at all. And Magnus has kind of played this Jobava London position exactly the way that you're supposed to, opening up the center with e4. However, it was that brilliancy in the center, hanging a piece, that really shocked Hikaru. He couldn't take it. He did not end up taking that piece on c3. Instead, he was forced down this path where, credit to him, he survived. But at what cost? He's down a couple pawns. His pieces are not developed. And the bishop pair, if you could even call it a semblance of an advantage for him, it looks like it's about to be traded off.
Yeah, unfortunately, there was a hope because sometimes they say bishop pair gives you 0.5 point. That would only slow things down to 1.5 advantage for white, but this is not like that. It's not just about counting the points, it's also about the piece activity. And let's be honest, black hasn't yet even finished the development.
Well, not finished, but even undoing with bishop back to c8. Look, the position of black's king here is questionable. There's no way it's going to survive. Probably the best that Hikaru can hope for is to just trade some pieces and go into an endgame down a couple pawns. But you're entering a phase where Magnus Carlsen is a technician. He's been pretty good throughout his career. All I'll say is that I think 2 pawns is a little bit too much, but we did see Arjun defend against Magnus in a number of positions that I think Magnus would always expect himself to win. So from Hikaru's perspective, it's mainly just the time ticking down and the fact that the bishops are being traded, that he's just not happy at all.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, Aman, that was interesting, kind of playing hide and seek with 2 bishops standing, looking at each other, but Hikaru could not decline the exchange, because had he done that, then he would be facing a checkmate by well, probably not a checkmate, but a harvest, serious harvest. But anyway, this is the position we have right now, and yeah, I agree with you, Aman. It's just not enough, compensation, like practical chances to swindle whatsoever. And the bad thing about this situation is that Magnus was somehow losing confidence, doubting himself, because he had very unlucky sequence of things in his previous match. But starting a matchup with Hikaru on such a devastating win is definitely a huge boost for his confidence.
Yeah, and we've seen most of the matches in the winners bracket in these last couple rounds end up quite close. So I don't think you should lose faith in Hikaru, even if he's going to lose this first game. I don't think it really has match implications just yet. It is a best of 4. There's lots of time, but an emphatic start for Team Liquid and Magnus Carlsen here, as it definitely looks like with the time advantage as well, 2.5 minutes plus the 2 extra pawns. You have to trust Magnus that he's going to convert this one. There's just no other way to think about it.
Yeah, and with all due respect to Magnus and Hikaru, I almost want to suggest you to take a look at the other game that we have yet undecisive, which is Jan Nepomniachtchi and Andrei Esipenko, as we know that Yu Yang-gi and Yang Krzysztof Duda are probably gonna finish their game soon because of that piece blunder. Oh, and just before we are leaving this game. I see a resignation from Hikaru.
Yeah, I think you called it right there. It was, probably time to leave because it looked like the match was about to end, and indeed it did in that exact moment. Hikaru not going to play that on because he trusts the technique and the time advantage that his opponent had. So Liquid with the first blood, and we go back to the game in progress here. And this one is Jan Nepomniachtchi against Esipenko. Remember, we're not in Armageddon here, so draws are absolutely still on the table. It looks very likely here, but pawn structure a little bit better for white. Just count those pawn islands once again.
Unfortunately, though, this is opposite colored bishop endgame, and truth to be told, unless you have an extra pawn or a significant difference in rook activity, usually those games finish in a draw. And now with the king coming to f6, I don't think we're gonna see any action as of right now.
Yep, I completely agree. Maybe the other game, although the other game did have an extra piece last time we looked, maybe we can check to see if that is still the case. But I believe that that was going to be a very, very easy win. So I think this might be the game that kind of has the most action as we drop in on this. And this is exactly what I was expecting to see. I believe that there's probably going to be forced mate here on G7, unless you, I don't know, sacks and pieces. I don't even know how you get out of this. This is game over.
You gotta trade the queens and then try to push your pass pawn, hoping that the white would get distracted by trying to get another checkmate. But yeah, there is actually no way to stop it.
Yeah, this was a guarantee.
Rook would be getting to G7, and that's why black resigned.
Yep, I think this is very clear. Could have called this one back when we jumped in and saw the hanging piece. So there's only one more game in progress there, and queen to E7 is enough to secure it. So let's go to what I presume is the only game in progress, unless there's just been a result in that one, which would be truly insane, other than a draw.
And it is a draw. We called it correct. All the Magnus having a clear point advantage in the winners final, but yet 3 more games to go. So everything is possible. And when it comes to loser quarterfinals, we have again nothing that we know of about Nepomniachtchi and Esipenko matchup as they finished in the draw. So once again, a decisive result could give a point to any of those 2 players. And then Aman, what about Duda and Yu Yangi?
Yeah, Magnus wins the first game in the winners final. Important to just know that Magnus is off to that early start, but Hikaru needs to bounce back in this next game, right? It is Esipenko and Nepomniachtchi drawn, which means the next player to win will win that match. With another draw, we go to Armageddon, and Yu Yangi in the losers round 3 has jumped out to a lead, which means he can draw the game and knock out his opponent, Jan Krzysztof Duda, in the next one. Hikaru Nakamura standing by, reading into the body language here. Obviously, you're not too not too happy after that result, but you can't lose faith. This is game number 1. Right? This is a long match, and these guys have gone toe-to-toe so many times, Dina. I think that Hikaru definitely has the bounce-back result in him, but should he lose another one with a 2-0 lead, Magnus Carlsen is, he's never going to look back.
I think the only hope right now for Hikaru Nakamura, other than play his best chess, of course, is going to be to maybe Magnus would actually relax a little bit, just like he relaxed in the previous match. Sometimes it could be a good strategy. Try to make your opponent think that the job is done and then strike back and then double strike back. Double down on the fact that they are being tilted.
Well, I've known, obviously, Hikaru Nakamura to be quite emotional over the years, but I feel like he's definitely got to a point where, a loss like that, I don't think is going to faze him too much going into game number 2. And I believe we have some action right off the bat. Hikaru Nakamura is going with Hikaru Nakamura's opening 1-0 b3 with the white pieces. And you know what, Dina? He's actually playing it the way that I've seen him play it many, many times before. He's back with pawn to e3 and the bishop developing on that diagonal instead of the double fianchetto setup.
I love that. And with c4 taking the control of the center, saying, I don't need that bishop. Go ahead and play a6. I'll just gonna capture, unless bishop a4 would also be possible. That's an interesting setup. You mentioned it before, and I'm very excited to see it finally for myself.
Yeah, we see the knight capture back on d5. Magnus is playing one of those positions where at the moment you look at the g7 pawn and it's very similar to what we saw in that previous game for Hikaru, where the bishop on b2 is kind of pressuring it. And so if you ever think about moving the bishop from f8, suddenly you drop the g7 pawn. So perhaps a little bit awkward getting developed here for Magnus. At the very least, he's going to have to answer a question or two.
Yeah, and you might think that the d2 pawn is quite passive, but don't worry, it will go on d4 sooner or later, and probably no rush as we speak, because the bishop on b2 is very powerful. You almost do not want to hide that bishop. And then after knight f6 and rook c1, that's what we have on the board. Hikaru has a clear advantage in the development.
Yeah, knight f6 was played for the very reason we just outlined, which is that the g7 pawn was attacked. You had to retreat in order to protect it. And immediately we start to see some, I don't want to call them opening problems already, but questions. Let's call them questions. Hikaru is saying rook c1 and opening up the idea of maybe knight to a4, maybe bishop to a3, maybe pawn to d4. Just a little bit of pressure on that c5 pawn. And Hikaru is definitely looking like he's got his bread and butter type of opening position that he knows inside and out. So he's comfortable, and you can just tell. I even think I saw Hikaru Nakamura head bob there.
Yeah, and Magnus is in his very typical sleeping pose, which is actually Magnus' focus pose.
Yeah.
And then I just wanted to highlight that after bishop a3, imagine you just say, but what's the problem with c5? I'm just gonna defend with b6. But then you would have lots of pressure on the c file and the on the c file and the diagonal here with the bishop. So d4 would be in the air and lots of kind of overload. That's how I would call it.
Hikaru Nakamura, he looks to the ceiling. You know, any advice up there that he can try to bring down? You know, all chess players know that look, but Hikaru that means he's definitely calculating and he's currently visualizing what he is going to do. Knight a4, he does go for this. And the interesting thing about the threats is that Hikaru has to calculate them out, but for Magnus, it's almost easier to defend them because he only has like one move to do it. Like we know that he's probably going to play b6 here, and I believe he just did.
Yes, he did. And now, once again, the question is going to be for Hikaru to exploit this kind of slightly more weakened c-file. You know, those typical ideas, once again, in the Sicilian when playing with white, and here Hikaru when playing with and then now Hikaru is actually playing the Sicilian setup for white instead of black, and he goes with bishop a6. Yet another attempt to misplace black pieces. Now the rook is on c7. Where is that heading?
Yeah, the knight goes back to c3, indicating clearly knight to b5, trapping the rook. But the move knight to b4 is the first one that I thought of in order to counterattack the bishop on a6 and also give a little bit of breathing room to the rook on c7. So once again, though, we're seeing the pattern of Hikaru making threats and Magnus just answering with one move. Okay, b6, one move, rook c7, right? Not a lot of thought behind it.
Yeah, and the one thing that comes to my mind, Aman, is look at the clock situation. We were praising so much Hikaru having his most comfortable setup, the opening he knows, bread and butter, you said it yourself. Love this expression. But what about the clock? Why is Hikaru behind?
Well, you know, I said bread and butter. I didn't say it was a gourmet meal. D4 just been played. Look, he's definitely been shuffling the pieces around, and I would say maybe Magnus has ended up on top because strangely, the rook on c7 will actually, I think, make it to d7. And suddenly it's a fantastic piece hitting the pawn in the center. It's really weird, but I've never seen, the rook developed in front of the queen like that too often. But I think we're seeing it here. And yeah, Magnus is probably happy. He's about to castle and looks like a symmetrical position where equality is the most likely outcome.
Yeah, I've seen this very beautiful maneuvers of the rook lift on rook a7 and then d7, but rook c8 to go to c7 and d7. That's definitely very creative and very powerful. And one more thing to notice, Aman, is that we are heading to our favorite pawn structure called the isolated pawn. And the moment I say that, I see knight b5 and then knight d4. Who knows? Maybe Hikaru is just like us, not feeling comfortable with those IQP.
Well, the first thing I'm looking at here is bishop takes the knight on f3. I think this is definitely a key moment here because there's pawn to e5 to follow. So I'm wondering with that rook on d7, what's happening here? Bishop takes f3 and pawn to e5. Seems like, okay, we have, bishop coming to maybe c6.
Oh yeah, bishop c6, e5 is somewhat... Oh my god.
Don't tell me.
Bishop takes e5.
Don't tell me. Oh no.
I'm sorry.
We fell for... I mean, look, if that's what we're falling for, I guess I'm not too upset. That's pretty. That's beautiful. Sacking the entire queen. And that might be what these players are both calculating right now. Magnus, maybe to his credit, did not want to end up on the opposite side of this. And based on Hikaru finding that queen sack against Alireza, I'm telling you, he already spotted this.
Beautifully played. And that's why Magnus decides to not consider bishop f3, but instead go for short castle. And the position is pretty even, and it is definitely in Magnus's favor because he is leading by a point here. And then once again, the X-ray is very uncomfortable. So sooner or later, especially now that there are no bishop c6 checks, I think Hikaru should consider getting the heck out of this X-ray.
I agree. Yeah, he also has the option to play knight e5. I thought knight e5 was the most logical looking move here because it just hits the rook outright and also stops e5. And then maybe you could follow up with bishop to f3, or kind of depends where the rook goes. I assume rook c7 will be played. So yeah, I kind of expect knight e5 here, but I agree. There's nothing too special about Hikaru's position. Also, that time is ticking, right? He's about to go under 5 minutes, which is going to open up almost a 2-minute time advantage for Magnus Carlsen.
Yeah, and one more thing to take into consideration, that this is Hikaru's white color. And for those players, it is a big deal, especially when you need to strike back. Now, Hikaru is listening to my advice, thank goodness, and he's going with the queen on c2, and after bishop a3, rook to d1, although I'm not so sure it's a good thing to follow my advice. But in any case, an interesting follow-up and no more pressure on the d-file.
Yeah, now it definitely feels like kicking the rook off the c-file indicates that, we might see a move like, I don't know, queen e7, and then black can play rook to c8. And then all of a sudden, look, the c-file belongs to Magnus Carlsen, and previously it was white who had the queen and rook on it. So it's amazing how things can shift just like that. But the pawn structure is not just even, it's symmetrical, right? The exact same pawns on both sides of the board. Quality of the pieces is not that much different. This is trending towards a position that I can see a lot of pieces just start to disappear, right? Trade, and all of a sudden we may be in a drawn position.
Yeah, and as this game sort of calmed down, I suggest that we have a minute to spare and take a look at the other two games. Let's not forget, we have a loser bracket, and that is going to be the last two games for some of those players.
Yeah, we'll certainly keep an eye on the evaluation and the nature of the position between Magnus and Hikaru. But remember, there's a couple players potentially facing elimination in this round. Duda with the white pieces against Yu Yangyi. He must win his game. So he has to win with the white pieces bottom left of your screen and the purple board. And also, in Esipenko, nobody's forced to do anything, but In the event that we get a decisive result, you win, you move on, you lose, you are knocked out.
Right, and young Krzysztof Duda actually is in a must-win situation here. So he's trying to squeeze the water out of the stone, it looks to me, because the position is completely equal. Although he has an open file A, but so does Black control the E file. And sometimes having an open file is not enough. You also need to have squares where to enter, and there are none on this A file.
Yeah, this is a position where you've got the bishop pair for white, but you can hardly tell. The bishop is tucked away on f1. I'm expecting that we're going to see some sort of exciting moves like pawn to g4. Maybe you could start to get that bishop out to the g2 square eventually. White's queen looks like it will be stationed pretty well on c4 or maybe c2. And in the meantime, it's the dark squares that are a problem. So don't be surprised if you see pawn to c6 and maybe bishop to c7. I feel like Yu Yang is starting to get ideas of queen to h2 checkmate.
Wow, beautiful. I'm mesmerized on how the moment you call g4, it actually happened on the board. And then apparently queen d6 wasn't as precise because now White is the one who has the slight edge. And I assume that c6, bishop c7 is just too good to be true. Might be followed by f4 and just kind of calming everybody down.
Agree that, it's kind of a it's a really basic idea at this level. They're going to know exactly what's up. I don't think that's going to be successful. Playing on the dark squares makes a little bit more sense for Black, but if I'm Duda, bishop pair, a clear plan of maybe bishop g2. I mentioned queen c4. We've seen that already. I think pawn up to f4, maybe trades on the e file, and just pushing those pawns on the king side is a clear and easy plan to follow. And he can maybe just play with his time advantage and the clear plans. I like his position and I like his chances to win this game and force Armageddon.
Absolutely. And as Yu Yang has still the entire 3 minutes to figure things out, we might make sure that we are not missing any action from the two big stars of this matchup.
Yeah, it looks to me, just glancing at the board in the bottom right, that not too much is happening. The evaluation is very, very close to the center of the board, which means it's about equal. Nepo has a massive time advantage. So let's go to Hikaru Nakamura and Magnus Carlsen. And in the event that the time scramble ensues in Nepo's game, we could definitely take a look at that. Always entertaining. But I think this is the place to be right now, as two bishops for Hikaru is nothing to laugh at. I think he's done a good job in the last couple moves, Dina.
This is looking to me like the best situation that has ever happened in this game for Hikaru. And I just want to take you real quick through the moves that we might have missed. It was bishop a3, rook d1, and now queen c7, queen b1. Look at this bishop to e4, sort of attacking the queen, but the queen is very powerful with the bishop here. A very typical setup when playing this type of pawn structures. And now kicking the queen and the beautiful knight on e5, almost like tables turned. And then after knight c6, White is forcing Black to give away a pair of bishops, and after rook trades on the open file, this is where we are right now. And yes, the activation of the king to e7, I love that. It is an endgame after all, but queens are still on the board, so you gotta be careful. And look at White, they're doing the same thing. King f1, queen c5, queen a4, and that is where we are as we speak.
He's trying to force these queens off the board, but also now you have to think about the queen also into d2. That's a real consideration. You have d3 bishop hanging, b2 bishop hanging, also queen d1 checkmate. So maybe queen to d2 from Black makes a lot of sense, and he's played it.
Yep, attacking both bishops, and you gotta be careful. Is that queen c2 the only move? You gotta try bishop c2 perhaps, but that's slightly risky.
Well, remember, he was trying to avoid a queen trade. So queen c2 would not make a lot of sense because he just spent the last 3 moves trying to avoid that queen trade. So while it's a good move, clearly that's not what he's trying to do.
Yeah, Hikaru is trying just to keep more pieces on the board so that there would be more chances to create something. Bishop c5, what a smart move. Covering the defense of the c2 bishop, now check. but just knight d2, but then it's dropping the pawn on g7. But who cares about the pawn when the bishop is hanging? And you know, Aman, I was told by a certain grandmaster that whenever your knight is defending your king, you're never gonna be in trouble.
Yeah, it definitely looks like in this position, queen e4 is the only move after knight d7, because I don't know how you deal with these hanging bishops down there apart from this. So will we just see either pawn to f5, knight back to f6? There's so many options here for Magnus.
Ooh, knight to c5 is an inaccuracy? How so?
Well, I think it's probably considered an inaccuracy just because now Hikaru's king has safety. We have the g2 square. So I guess queen to c4 is an idea. Just keep the bishop guarded, bring the queen back to e2. Whoa, I would never have expected queen h7. What an unorthodox defense.
But what about g6 in the air? Then the idea would be bishop takes g6, but instead bishop c3 and bishop a3 and bishop b4. We're playing hide and seek with the two bishops standoff.
Wow. And okay, first of all, there's a repetition. Is Magnus going to go for repetition or is he going to go for more here? The engine is saying there's more.
But Magnus is pretty comfortable with the draw. He's taking the lead, and this is gonna be a free-fall repetition after bishop b4. No! Magnus declines the repetition and is going for f5, blocking the bishop. And now the question is, who's gonna defend the bishop?
This is incredible. f5, he's going for it. Yes, you can play bishop takes knight. It's going to be opposite bishops, but this is the queen on h7. Why is it there, right? You've gone way too far away from home, and Magnus Carlsen, I think he smells blood. He smells an opportunity to win this game. The bishop on c2 is trapped.
Oh my god. And then Hikaru has to sacrifice the bishop on f5, 2 pawns that he's been grabbing, but is that gonna be enough? Still a little bit of hope for Hikaru, but only for a perpetual, which would still be a comfortable result for Magnus.
That's crazy because it was Hikaru that I felt, he had that bishop pair. He was avoiding the queen trade. Clearly, he was trying to be optimistic in the position, but his optimism went a little bit too far. And now Magnus is safeguarding the king, tucking it away on h7. He's got the extra piece. Obviously, it's for 2 pawns, but still, this looks like Magnus could jump out to a 2-0 lead over Hikaru Nakamura in the winner's bracket.
Which would be an insanely hard situation for Hikaru. And now we see c4 trading more pawns, kind of liquidating that weakness, probably going after a2 if the pawns were to get traded, as now Black King is really safe. And I do want to highlight that here for Hikaru, it's definitely not a funny situation to be in.
Now, hang on a sec. The A pawn is dropping. So the A pawn is about to disappear. The winning chances just changed dramatically, I think, because now if you trade the queens, I'm not sure that this is a win anymore. And don't forget the time. There's no increment on this game. Hikaru is one of the best speed chess players in the world. He could win.
Oh no. It looks like Hikaru is back on track with his queen checks and everything. And the pass pawn. That's incredible.
Yeah, Hikaru just absolutely works some magic there. He is going to most likely make a draw. I still think he has some winning chance. I know it sounds crazy to say, but with no increment chess, the king running away everywhere, there's opportunities.
I believe you. And now after queen takes a2 and the queen trade, white is just gonna try to activate their king because white is absolutely not afraid of the queen trade because the king is gonna be faster to this queen side. And the beautiful thing is happening that it is a queen endgame and black is once again activating the king. As long as black doesn't blunder a mate in 1, oh my god! It's queen trade forced by Hikaru, but that's not the right thing to do.
He goes for it. Remember, if he takes on h6, it's going to be a draw, and he's just going to hide his king in the corner. And I believe we're just going to see the draw made here by the players. Yeah, no one's going to get into any funny business about flagging. A shocking result. And as Hikaru blundering a piece, you have to almost count that as a win. What a defense.
And both players are smiling. We saw that on their camera. GG's by Hikaru. Well played. What a comeback. Very important. Remember, you gotta get into your opponent's head. And as we are making conclusions about this game, one more game hasn't finished yet.
Let's go straight there. We also have a result. Jan Nepomniachtchi beats Esipenko because they were tied half apiece. That means that Nepo just knocked out Esipenko from this event and moves on in the bracket.
And speaking of knockouts, young Krzysztof Duda here really needs to win this game. And he has 32 seconds versus 15. It's an opposite colored bishop endgame, but lots of things are about to happen. And young Krzysztof Duda just has to do the dirty flagging.
And you know what? He's going to do it. First of all, I've seen Duda play Bullet on Chess.com. He's a phenomenal player. He's probably very used to this. Guess what? He's going to make a ton of moves. He's going to make a pawn move, and then he's going to make a lot of bishop moves again. This is a guy who has played Bullet before. He's very good. He's seasoned. He knows exactly how to flag this. Let's see if he can do it, because look at those pawn moves on the king side. There's h4, there's h5, there's f4. He has so many pawn moves. This is an easy win.
Just let's take a bet at what time he's going to play f4 and attack the bishop.
It doesn't matter anymore. I mean, at this point, he might even be winning on the actual board. Masterclass on flagging right there, ladies and gentlemen. Jan Krzysztof Duda is going to tie this up.
Beautiful play, and he's so relaxed, and that's gonna mean amazing news for Aman Hambledon as we are heading into yet another Armageddon.
That's right. We have Armageddons incoming, which means we have tied matches in the losers bracket. Krzysztof Duda against Yang Yi, that is 1-1, but Jan Nepomniachtchi is moving on. I believe that Nepo will move on to play Arjun. We'll have to see the bracket again, but there are your results. Magnus Carlsen, Hikaru Nakamura, a draw in that game. Unbelievable considering that Hikaru got overzealous and kind of blundered his bishop. So he had to sack a piece and still made the draw. That is insane, but Magnus retains the lead.
What an exciting sequence, and we still have 2 more games to go for Magnus and Hikaru, and yet the Armageddon once we come back.
Absolutely. We are going to be back with Armageddon with more matchups, but we want to let everyone know about something a little quirky. I mean, he's focused on the game at hand, on the match at hand, but Magnus also has something else famous about him. His genes, if we recall, when he was unpaired in the 9th round of December's World Rapid and Blitz Championships. The world #1 and his infamous genes took over the chess world. Now, he's actually putting them up for auction, and all proceeds are going to the Big Brothers Big Sisters charity to support youth mentorship at chess clinics, community events, and beyond, which will enrich the lives of young people through the game of chess. The auction is running this week, so if you want to claim this iconic piece of chess history, you can head over to the Genes auction on go.chess.com/Genes auction, or use !auction in chat. Yes, I just read a CTA about auctioning genes. We will be back with the real chess action right after this break.
Now, Magnus Carlsen arrived to Friday's events in jeans.
They just want to be sure this is jeans or not. They agreed that it's not a jeans. They're just the trousers.
Magnus is showing up fashionably late. Probably some fashionable jeans as well.
back to the 2025 Chessable Masters. Grandmaster Mon Hambleton, Women's Grandmaster Dina Belenkaya. Dina, we have an Armageddon incoming, so let's just get straight to it and announce the bids. Yu Yang Yi bid 8 minutes, and Yanchisov Duda bid 8:29. That means with the lower bid, Yu Yang Yi is going to be with the black pieces. We can remind everyone, Armageddon, why does everyone want the black pieces? Why are they bidding for who can have the black pieces? It's because if you have the black pieces and you make a draw, you win the entire game. So these players both tried to bid lower than one another. Ultimately, Yu Yang Yi does get the black pieces with 8 minutes on the clock, which means Duda plays white with the full 10 minutes, but he has to win the game, Dina.
Yeah, and that's not an easy thing to do, but this is what they are here for, you know, no choice but to play your best chess. And at the same time, right now we have on the screens Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura, perhaps the game that we are here the most for, without any doubt. And what is this? Magnus is starting the game with 1e4. It looks like a very classical thing, but I don't like this pawn on c6.
Yep, a reminder, while we have Armageddon action in the loser's bracket, of course, the action hasn't stopped in the winner's final. We still have Magnus Carlsen for Team Liquid against Hikaru Nakamura for Team Falcons. They are still battling it out here. And yeah, this is an unusual opening, but I feel like it's becoming usual. This is something that Hikaru Nakamura is starting to play very, very often. This knight to e7, knight to g6 maneuver. So unusual because we all expect the knight to just end up on f6, but it's something that he plays pretty well. The bishop on c1 is tied down to that b pawn a little bit, but what I was thinking is if the bishop moves and the queen takes it, you could actually just trap the queen with rook b1. So, and actually everything I just said just showed up on the board. So there you go.
Surprisingly, Hikaru does not fall for that, and instead he goes for bishop to c5. Protecting the queen, offering a dark bishop trade and saying, hey buddy, all I need now to do is to push my pawn in the center and develop my bishop, and life is gonna be beautiful.
It could be all the way to d5. It could be just pawn to d6. And the knight, of course, wants to jump in. Knight e5, knight f4, some great squares for that piece.
Yep. And you might think that this is kind of a dark squared weakness here for black. That's why rook d1 is here happening right now, heading to queen d6. I will not hide that had white had an extra move, queen d6 would be really, really annoying. But now it's Hikaru's turn, and he's definitely gonna do something about it. And when I say that, what is he gonna do? Is that knight f4?
Well, yeah, I'm looking at the knight moves that are available. Strangely, I was actually looking at f5. That could be completely off, but I was hoping that if I traded the f pawn for the e pawn, that if I could play d5, I'm so happy. However, the real issue is if I don't get to play d5, my position might be losing. So that is one of the riskier moves you could do, and certainly a knight move seems to make the most sense here. But I agree, queen d6 is causing Hikaru to just pause for a moment and say, wait a minute, this is my opening and everything, but let's make sure it doesn't get out of hand.
Yeah, and the more we kind of look at this position, the more I realize that f5 is the only way to actually develop. Because even if you move the knight somewhere on e5, what's gonna be next? It's not like you're gonna be able to kick my rook out of d6 that easily. So yeah, I guess what's going on through Hikaru's head right now is if f5 is an okay move to play, and apparently no, because Hikaru chooses the knight e5.
Yeah, and I mean, knight e5, not loved by the engine, clearly. Queen d6 is obvious. I imagine we're going to see that right away, and we do. And yeah, queen d6. I mean, Magnus, the reason that you have to be so happy if you're Magnus here is not because your position is so good. First of all, it's a great position, but really just it's so easy. You don't have to think about anything. You put the queen on the best square, you trade, maybe you double in the center, pawn from f2 to f4, and then maybe pawn from e4 to e5. You just expand. And what's happened here in this opening? This is almost, I want to say, an opening disaster.
Oh yeah, it looks like Magnus is taking Hikaru to school. And that's not something that Hikaru would be happy with. Another thing I could try to suggest is f6 and the knight on f7. And yes, Hikaru is doing that as we speak. That does kick the rook, but unfortunately there's bishop c4. And then the knight is pinned. And now even after bishop takes f7, rook takes f7, it looks like this bishop on c8 is just forever buried alive. But actually Magnus is choosing rook d4.
Yeah, rook d4 is just very smart because the d-pawn cannot move. If you move it to d6, then you take the knight on f7. So this is effectively the same thing as having the rook on d6 here. The rooks are going to double. The white king is going to come into the center. The bishop on c8, if it ever moves, loses the d7 pawn. This looks hopeless. Like, I mean, even pawn to e5 becomes a very serious idea for Magnus here. Absolutely the wrong position you wanted to get as Hikaru. And most importantly, Dina, I can't stress enough, this best of 4 match ends with a Magnus Carlsen victory. And yes, e5 was played. He's opening things up before Hikaru can react. He could win the entire match right here with a win.
Oh my lord, that's unbelievable. Such an easy opening for Magnus. Who would have guessed? And yes, once again, a win would just finish the match right away. So Hikaru has to do something. He's not in the most comfortable situation right now. And I just don't want to hear another "I'm retiring" after this match.
Well, yeah, we know you're a Hikaru fan based on the attire that you came with today. Knight to h6 played by Hikaru. Knight to e4 played by Magnus. And wow, okay, at some point we had to see it, right? Because if you don't play the d-pawn out, Hikaru is strong enough to realize from a human perspective, you were just trapped, completely stuck, and he doesn't want to play that way. He wants to play where he can actually move his pieces. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, and we just had to see the en passant for the memes, as we know that everybody in chat knows this brilliant move by the rules of chess, and now bishop on d7 is actually much better, but at the cost of a pawn.
Yeah, this could be right here, Magnus, with a pass pawn, like sending Hikaru down to the loser's bracket, I believe. Rook to e1 played. This is all about technique now. Can Hikaru pull off more magical defense once again? It'll be very impressive if he manages to get out of this.
Well, thank God for the loser's bracket, because Hikaru will not finish his performance at the Chessable Masters in this particular game, even if it goes down the way it is supposed to, as we look at the eval bar and at the position and at the pawn count as we speak.
Completely agree. Rook over to e8. He's not giving up. Of course, he's still going king f2 is exactly what we expected. Time to bring the king into the middle. And at this point, although g5 might be one of the better moves in the position, it does reek of desperation. He knows his position is not good, so he's trying to mix it up. If you take on g5, obviously we see the point of that move. The rook on f8 stares directly at the king on f2. But of course, that's not forced.
Yeah, that's an interesting standoff here, and then probably g3 is going to happen, I guess, protecting the f4. And just a quick reminder to everybody that that's not the only game that's taking place right now. Maybe we have a few seconds to spare and take a look at Duda versus Yu Yang, because that is a real fight for survival.
Yeah, Armageddon obviously is key. You just want to get the lay of the land over here to see which players we might be losing. Yu Yang, if it's a draw, is looking good, but my first impression looking at that is that there's nothing to be too upset about if you're Duda. You have winning chances and you have a big lead on the clock. So if you want me to make a call just looking at this game, I think that Duda definitely looks like he's poised to advance either on the clock or on the board. The knight on b4 is hitting a6. So great position here in an Armageddon format. And well, obviously double question mark move on the board. I don't think it's that bad, honestly. But look, white is breaking through in this game. I love Duda's chances. And now that we kind of know what's happening here, Dina, we can get back to Magnus and Hikaru, because although Hikaru's not facing elimination, he might end up in the loser's bracket, right?
Yeah, and all eyes are on Hikaru right now, because that might be his last game in the winner's bracket as we speak. g3 did not happen. Magnus decided to leave this pawn just like that. Instead, he played rook to b3, attacking b6, and after g takes f4, now supposedly Magnus's idea was just to grab the pawn on b6, and he does it, and that's where knight e3 is taking place, and now bishop to d3, protecting both the bishop and the knight. So far, things are still under white's control.
Yeah, but let's talk about, what needs to happen for Magnus to mess this up, because I think a little bit of it is happening right now. Imbalances, right? We're seeing that Hikaru Nakamura with that G5 move has totally found a way to imbalance the game. Yes, it might end up, falling in his face, but he has a position that is losing, right? We know that the position is not good, so he's doing the right thing by making it messy.
Yeah, and Hikaru is a true specialist of that. I just witnessed that insane reaction by Magnus. He definitely missed something. He definitely regretted his rook b3. He realized it, but he needs to calm down because everything is still fine. Just keep it together and finish the game.
Yeah, knight g4 makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you move the king up the board, he's probably hoping for either knight takes h2 or knight to e5 in the center. I did think that the knight on e3 was kind of well placed. The other follow-up move, I guess, could be to play f5, right? That's what he's looking at. King f3, f5, hitting the knight, which is pinned to the rook on e1. So I think even though the engine is kind of looking for king f3, you have to admit, Dina, f5 looks really tough to handle.
Oh, absolutely. And if you think that you're the king of the hill, then you would just lose the knight because you cannot take the other knight with the king because it is protected by the bishop. Oh, and king f3 did happen, and f5, and knight c5. Brilliant move by Magnus.
Yeah, this is the line that the engine was looking for. Magnus spots it, much to the dismay of Hikaru, and I think we have a couple moves here. The rook has taken on e1 already. The knight has taken on d7, and here we are in the live position. And to spot this as the best is a situation that Hikaru put Magnus in. This is what I mean. Even though the engine is still saying that Magnus is better, you have to say that Hikaru's created something, right? He's won some material at least.
I'm just still recovering since the rook was sacrificed only to take the bishop and attack yet another rook. I think all Gotham chess fans right now are so excited to see this happening. And yes, Magnus is about to secure his win in the match.
It looks like it, but I mean, his position was commanding earlier. Now he's down material, which means that Magnus has to play very, very well. If he makes a mistake now, it's not like previously. All of a sudden, the evaluation could go much closer to equal. And as I say it, this is what I mean. He can't count Hikaru Nakamura out because he's looking up and he's starting to get that feeling that, wait a minute, there might be a move. The engine spots something, some hope. Do you think it's enough?
So I just want to show something real cute because rook b7 could have been led by rook takes d7, rook takes d7, and knight e5. I was almost happy, but then I noticed king f2. But now, if the other rook goes to e8, the line that we see computers suggest, and now rook b7, all of a sudden rook takes d7 works, and after rook takes d7, knight e5, and king can no longer attack the rook on e8. Unfortunately, king only moves to one square, and that's why this is so powerful. Aman, you just jinxed it.
Well, I think I was trying to say that there was lots of opportunities for Hikaru to still come back in this one, and we've seen exactly that. The d6 pawn is going to disappear, and this is what I mean about Hikaru. You just can't count him out, even though it looks like Magnus is kind of converting. He's doing it in a way where he's down material, so I actually think that Hikaru has great chances to stay alive here. This would be phenomenal to not lose the match on this game after the opening that we saw. Complete disaster.
Yeah, it's a very interesting situation because from a human perspective, you just look at the position, count the amount of pawns and say, hey, I got a bishop and 3 pawns for the rook. It's more than enough. I have a huge material, I'm material up, so what's the problem here? Why is this not winning?
Yeah, obviously we're dealing with a position where Magnus should be winning. So despite Hikaru's efforts, you can't fight the evaluation. You know, if the engine says that that you're worse, then you are worse. And if Magnus finds the best moves, then he will win the game. But just giving credit to Hikaru as a defender, because he's making Magnus work harder than he feels like he should. And that's the type of move that you have to work hard for. King to e5, ignoring the threat to the bishop and making a threat on the knight.
Yeah, and yet another pawn has just fallen. If you noticed, and if you count the material, it's already 4 pawns and the bishop for the rook. It must be completely winning, but things are not as easy. And Hikaru has this immense skill of just resisting, and sometimes it becomes so annoying that white can just slip something on the way.
Yeah, Magnus is. I mean, he's one of the best for a reason. So even though we've seen tremendous defense, and you have to give it to Hikaru, it looks like Magnus's position was too good. That even when he was making some mistakes, was he ever worse? Did he ever throw it away to a draw? No, probably just didn't make the best move in a position. Now it looks like he's gone back to making the best move, and King e5 stings, because if you take the bishop on h7, the king will take on d6, and there's so many extra pawns there that the game will definitely be in Magnus's favor.
Yep, and that's why Hikaru is thinking. And now he's playing knight to b7, trying to keep knights on the board, understandably so. Bishop to e4, attacking the knight, rook e8 check, king f4, knight to c5, attacking the bishop. But Magnus sees that he ain't gonna blunder that bishop in one move, and then rook d8, attacking another knight. Hikaru's just trying to be annoying as heck. But king e3, rook e8, and then king d2. Oh my god, I'm just not in time to say all those moves. I'm just gonna watch whatever happens here.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to stick with the live board at this point. The moves are coming in so fast, and unfortunately for Hikaru, yes, he's being tricky, but Magnus is just being better. He has the better position, and he's converting appropriately. The bishop covers the knight, king c4, king b5 will happen, the a pawn will disappear, and the rook is just, it's kind of going side to side, hoping for an avenue, some kind of pawn to take. But by the looks of this, at this point, I feel that there's so many extra pawns that Magnus does have this conversion.
Yeah, and like, well, one hope here for Hikaru is that the knights are still on the board, so there are still checks, there are still tricks. Hikaru just needs to be resourceful. Oh.
This is the only trick that he set, by the way. This is the only reason he played rook g8, and Magnus walked into hanging a piece, and he's still winning. Can you imagine? He's down a rook. I mean, obviously he has 5 pawns, so you know, there's a reason that he's still in this game. But Magnus blundered. He's got a rook less on the board, and the engine is like, yeah, no problem, no problem.
Yeah, but that's certainly not the same feeling right now in Magnus's head. Imagine he doesn't convert this.
Completely different. He probably thinks that he almost could be losing this game. This could be monumental in terms of the energy shift, the momentum going in Hikaru's direction. Because honestly, maybe Magnus blunders that and still wins the game, which is absolutely insane, but we'll see.
Yeah, I do have to explain everybody watching this right now that the reason why white is winning is because this knight has absolutely nowhere to go. And now Magnus finally found the winning plan, which is gonna be to transfer the bishop to b5, and knight is gonna be bye-bye, Danya, bye.
So how do you describe something like this? Magnus is obviously, I mean, he's embarrassed. He just blundered a full piece. But is this just Magnus things? He blunders an entire piece to a basic tactic that Hikaru cleverly set up, and he's still winning. It must be so frustrating as Hikaru. Like, what more do you want from the guy? And he's going to resign. Amazing. He blunders a piece and wins the game and wins the match. Magnus Carlsen for Team Liquid does take out Hikaru Nakamura and wins by getting to the 2.5 point margin, and he will be moving on to the winners grand final, and of course Hikaru Nakamura down into the losers bracket. Dina, after that result.
Oh no, I'm so disappointed, but that's okay. I'm a commentator. I'm not allowed to be biased. And I do have to highlight that we actually had another game that finished in a decisive win for white, and Jan Krzysztof Duda is continuing his path. by knocking out Yu Yangi. He actually flagged his opponent, as you can see, in a very drawish, very typical rook endgame that was completely unwinnable. Oh, yes, and well, a clock is a clock. Here, no increment, and that's what happened.
And he played rook b5, I just want to point out, which is a complete blunder because, hey, this is, esports meets chess. He knew that there was a chance his opponent would leave the rook hanging and try to catch him in a pre-move. Honestly, if you were going to lose on time, great way to go. Here is your bracket winners final. We just saw Magnus Carlsen on Team Liquid taking out Hikaru Nakamura on Team Falcons, 2.5 to half. The grand final has Magnus Carlsen's name in it. And down in the losers bracket, losers round 3, the matchups are there. They've moved on now. We've got Duda, we've got Nepo moving on, and your losers quarterfinals are set. Arjun Erigaisi, Jan Nepomniachtchi, Alireza Firouzja, and Jan Krzysztof Duda. Those are your matchups. Dina, which one stands out to you? I mean, they all look so exciting as Magnus Carlsen waits for everyone to finish their fights.
Honestly, I have no prediction to make because these are just some of the best players that we have seen so far. And the only thing that I'm gonna say is that Hikaru Nakamura is gonna be one of the best losers in the losers bracket.
I think you have a good point there. Obviously, there's a great chance for a rematch in the grand finals between Magnus and Hikaru. I think everyone wants to see it. But after all the games today have wrapped, we still have an interview planned with Grandmaster Magnus Carlsen. So don't go anywhere. We are taking a short break and we'll be back with that interview when we return. welcome back to the 2025 Chessable Masters as part of the Champions Chess Tour. Myself and Dina are joined by the winner of the match against Hikaru, Grandmaster Magnus Carlsen, who won the winner's final. Magnus, congratulations. I suppose I'll get this out of the way at the start of the interview, but what were you feeling in that match against Arjun a match ago when, honestly, it felt like you might wrap it up with the rook against the bishop and then even the game after, but he showed a lot of resilience taking you all the way to Armageddon?
Yeah, it's funny that rook against bishop is generally considered, with 3 against 3, like it's generally considered quite easy to win. But like he chose the most resilient setup, and it actually wasn't that easy. I think I did everything correct for a long time, but then I had to find a certain resource which I discovered like right after I'd made my move, but then it was too late to get back to it. So that was a bit unfortunate. So as you said, like, it looked like the match would be over quite soon, but yeah, then all of a sudden it turned into a complete mess, and I was very lucky to get out of it with the win.
And then Magnus, he had such an easy matchup against Hikaru. Was that the fastest you ever finished him off?
I think Hikaru had a very tough emotional match against Alireza, so I think he was not quite able to readjust. He felt like he was a bit nervous, a little bit off. So it wasn't perfect for me either. But it seems that starting with white in the first game, I'm able to put a lot of pressure, and yeah, then it's tough for them. But of course, it was pleasant to see that the match was wrapped up in 3.
Well, yeah, of course, congratulations. And I have to ask you, Magnus, you're wearing the jersey right now, right? For Team Liquid, you've got Fabi there signed alongside you. Obviously, Hikaru on Team Falcon. So many signings in the chess world right now. I mean, what does it mean to be playing on Team Liquid and have esports meeting chess like this?
No, it's fun. I actually had dinner with Steve, the Liquid co-CEO, yesterday. They're super interesting, very ambitious people there, and I'm excited to be part of it. And now I've probably more or less punched my ticket, I think, for the finals. So yeah, the best is yet to come.
And Magnus, how does it feel to be back to standard chess after all your freestyle adventures recently?
Oh, it feels okay, especially playing a bit of a faster time control. Then you can kind of allow yourself a little bit more leeway in terms of what openings you play and so on. So, I'm happy to play chess either way, be it freestyle, classical, or faster normal chess. I really like them both.
Well, Magnus, you were definitely not going to escape this interview because I had to read out a game-worn pair of jeans were being auctioned. So you're not going to leave without explaining that to me and everyone here. What's up with that?
Yeah, I don't remember who. Maybe it was Levy who mentioned it on Twitter or something. And then, but it was my thought from actually very early on that this was a fun idea, and it's all gonna go to a nice charity, and hopefully it's something people are interested in. It's certainly up there with one of the more famous contemporary jeans, that's for sure.
That's right. I mean, there's game-worn jerseys in other sports. Speaking of other sports, Magnus, final question. Thoughts on the Luka trade?
I think there's something more there. We haven't been told the whole story.
Okay, fair.
This
You heard it
is
here
my
first.
conspiracy hat.
All right. Well, Magnus, we will let you go. You are in the grand final, so obviously you'll await the winner. Best of luck in that match. And again, congratulations on the results today.
Hey.
Here we go, Dina. That was Magnus Carlsen. You know, some nice thoughts, an insight into the mind there. And he is in the grand final. You can see it on your screen. Obviously, we have the losers quarterfinal matchups. Arjun, Nepo, Firouzja, and Duda. And eventually, one player will move on to play Hikaru Nakamura for us to find out, will we get a rematch in the grand finals of Hikaru Nakamura and Magnus Carlsen?
Well, the good thing, Aman, is that we are gonna be there to see that happening tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, as the show must go on.
That's right. Obviously, there's lots more chess to happen. Unfortunately, no more chess for today, but you've already seen the bracket, so you know there are some exciting matchups upcoming. That's all from us here. Shout out to the production. Dina, a pleasure as always. And we will see everyone for the action tomorrow as we find out who will move on to play against Magnus in the grand final. Guys, that's it for today's coverage of 2025 Chessable Masters. We will see you next time.